Hello and welcome to the postseason Q&A of Rolling with Difficulty. We've just finished season 1 and now we're here to talk about it for entirely too long. I am Sophia, aka Dani, and I'm joined by everyone else who's normally on the podcast. Everyone else, say hi.
Woo!
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Austin has a look on his face that says, "Don't I normally do that?"
I'm excited
Sorry,
to
bud.
be included.
You're in the podcast domain now, and we all know who runs this place.
This is my domain of dread, essentially. Like much like when you go into Strahd's domain and you get stuck there. This is my Barovia right now. I am the big boss, and my CR is much higher than it should be. As I'm sure you all know, we just wrapped season 1, which I'm very excited about. We had a really great time, got through 8 episodes of thrilling hijinks and adventures. And before we jump into the discussion of that thrilling hijink and adventure, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to get through. So as you may be aware, season 2 is in fact happening. It premieres this summer with more specific dates to come. Keep an eye on our socials for those. We're really excited to keep doing the adventures, to have a few more fun episodes, and maybe introduce a few guests. We'll see. But we're really excited to continue all of this, and we hope that you'll join us this summer to hear more tales from the Astral Sea. Before we jump in, I just want to give a little shout out to a lot of the fan works that have popped up. We've been really, really enjoying and honored by the community that has sprouted around the podcast. Specifically, shout out to the subreddit and trope talk pages that were fan created, as well as all the TV tropes
page. Is that
Like by session 2, like by the second session or something like that.
Yeah.
That was
It
insane.
was incredible.
Real MVP there.
Yeah,
Doing
really,
the
really
work.
fun. And also all the great, amazing fan artists who have been, tagging us in your work and everything. It's always really cool to see our dumb ideas made into gorgeous pieces of art. So thank you so much for all of that. We really appreciate you guys. And we will link...
Mind blown every day.
Yeah, and we'll link the subreddit and TV tropes page in the show notes below. So if you want to check those out for yourself, definitely go click on those links. A lot of you asked for a special extra release, our session 0, and because you asked, we will answer. Coming up in just a week or 2 is going to be the session 0 release. We're very excited to be able to share this with all of you, mostly because we didn't think we were going to share it with all of you, so it's like free content for me. I don't have to edit this one. I do have to edit this one, but I already edited most of it. Anyway, Session 0
You get to hear us before we're good and comfortable with this.
Yes, exactly. So this is where we first played the characters together for the first time ever. This is where we did all of our tech figuring out. So it's a little rougher than the other episodes, but it is still a very fun adventure. And I hope you guys enjoy that little bit of a bonus page from the storybook that is the long and storied history of the Paraspora. In addition to Session 0, we've got a bunch of new merchandise in the Rolling with Difficulty Redbubble shop. If you'd like character stickers or some fun slogans specifically associated with the characters, a personal favorite of all of ours is Stars Out, Arms Out, which you can get on a tank top.
Hell yeah.
Yes, as nature intended.
Yes,
Should only go on a tank top.
among quotes for all the other members of the party. Be sure to check those out on Redbubble. And we also, of course, have stickers for each of the characters and potentially a little man named Plug as well. You'll have to look and see. But that is all of my very long list of housekeeping things to announce at the top of this episode before we just talk about things. Are you guys ready to just talk about things?
Oh, so
Yes.
ready.
For,
I'd like to see
I
you
know
stop
shut up
me.
talking about things, basically,
Yeah.
since we stopped recording, so...
Yeah.
hell yeah.
Amazing. Well, before we get into the questions that were sent to us from fans, I just want to kind of go around and get everyone's kind of closing thoughts on season 1. What were you, what were you excited to do? Did you have any goals in the season? And what do you think now that it's done? And then just, let me know what you're excited for in season 2. So I want to throw to Austin first because he likes to talk so much. Why don't you kick it off for us?
Whoa.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's a lot. It's heavy, and I'm sure we'll circle back to a lot of things. It's a loaded question, but more than anything else, when you pitch the show to me, there's a lot of actual plays out there, and they are very different in some ways and very similar in a lot of ways. And so when you pitched doing this actual play, and the things that would make it unique, my hope was really, whether it's something that lasts or not, that it just shows people another way to play D&D. I think that's the biggest strength. I enjoy listening to actual plays. They're not for everyone, but I know that the time investment can be a lot, and they're not necessarily the most engaging at times when people are sitting around trying to figure out if they're supposed to be rolling an ability check or a saving throw and what's the difference between those things. And really just the idea that anyone could be like, wait, you could play D&D like this and pick up a campaign. That was my hope. And it kind of seems like that's what people are doing, because I've seen people say like, oh, I'm incorporating these Planescape things. Oh, this is going to convince me to play D&D again. And that's really the biggest thing I hoped for. So the D&D is the most fun you can have with your brain. If you're not playing it, you should be. That's my opinion on the matter. As far as specifically season 1, I really wanted season 1 to be the story of the crew becoming the crew of the Paraspora, because even before the stream starts, my headcanon for it is that you guys are kind of more like coworkers rather than a family. And that's the reason that, because when Sophia, when you pitched the show to me, it was like, let's be episodic. I think we still mostly manage that because problems are introduced at the start of an episode and finished. But the reason that there's no time jumps between any episodes is because I wanted to make it clear this is the narrative of you guys forming together. That might change in future seasons. I think we'll probably see ambiguous time jumps between episodes, so they won't flow directly into each other. But that was my goal for season 1. And the funny thing about it is that I wrote up all these, a few times I wrote down ideas for the episodes, and I refined and I refined and I refined. And then I had, in my notes app, I had a list of the 8 episodes before we started recording. And I was like, roughly, here's what I expect we will do in each episode. And I think, with the exception of one, it played out almost exactly how I expected, which is funny because about halfway through the season, I was like, oh, this is going to I was looking at specifically, and spoilers ahoy, everyone, specifically thinking about the fight with Prior Sephiroth. I was thinking, the way that I've set this up is that it's mostly the Prior who's interested in getting Kyana back. And I think that was made somewhat clear with the cutscenes back in, between the Prior and the Mind Flayer that we showed. It's mostly Prior Sephiroth was like, so when they kill Prior Sephiroth, actually that might end the Mind Flayer plot for this season. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to come up with a different season finale if that's the case. And of course, you guys, there was always the chance that she would make it away with Kyana, and she nearly did. You guys beat her, but then as you're about to kill her, I'm like, okay, and then the intellect devour is going to come out, and they'll realize it's mind flayers, and that'll be a cool reveal, and they'll kill it. And then you're like, I throw her off the edge of the ship. I'm like, what? And I'm like, I'm desperate. I'm like, okay, so they're not going to know it's mind flayers, and the Prior's going to be gone. Is this just the end of all of that plot? And it kind of it's just going to fall flat. No. Like, how is it going to circle back in? And I'm looking through my notes, and I'm looking at the stat block, and I'm like, wait. First off, characters do not fall until the start of their turn. So technically, the Mind Flayer's turn starts, you shove her off the side, and then the Mind Flayer's turn starts, the Intellect Devourer's turn starts, and the body plummets. And I was like, and Intellect Devour, there's one amendment I've made to my Intellect Devourers, and it's that instead of them having stupid dog feet, they have spider legs, because I think that's far creepier. So I gave them spider climb. It was like, in case it needs to like climb something, I just gave it spider climb. It was basically the only difference I gave it. And I'm looking at it like, it teleports out of the head with 5 feet movement. Yeah, this thing can get right out of the head and onto the side of the ship.
Yep.
And then they'll plane shift, and it'll just haunt them on the ship. And I had notes written up for if you tried to find it, like alien style, searching for the chest burster. No one clocked what it was. And it just, as a result, halfway through the season, I'm looking at this list of episodes like, I'm going to have to change a bunch of this stuff. And then this one little detail, I'm like, nope, everything's back on, folks. Meat's back on the menu. And the rest is history.
It's so funny to me. Yeah. It just flavor text nearly derailed your entire campaign. I was like, I don't feel entirely comfortable just murdering this person who raised me, so I don't really want to have to look at the corpse. And that's as far as that went for me.
Yeah. But that was such a great
it was super dramatic.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Oh my god! So
Yeah.
that's so those are my thoughts on what I wanted as season 1 and sort of vaguely the plan. I should tweet that list actually with the one redacted episode, so you can see people can see how things shifted around a little bit. But honestly, it played out a lot closer than I expected. Even as we were playing through, I was like, "This is gonna change. This is gonna change," and then it ended up circling back to be close again. So I thought that was funny.
Someday we'll get that alien episode in, because if there's one thing I want to do,
the fact that we could have had an alien episode and we were just too stupid.
Yeah, we're just dumb.
The fan art alone would have been exquisite. They wouldn't even need to change anything.
I already wear coveralls,
Dani
damn
with
it.
plug in her arms.
I want that fan art on my desk by Monday, but you all knew that was coming.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but Noir, let's jump to you next. What were some of your closing thoughts on season 1, and what's something you're looking forward to in season 2?
Yeah, like, I kind of just mimicking what Austin was saying. Like, I didn't really have many thoughts about it being an actual play. I was just happy to play D&D with my friends. But realizing that, us and Austin could, in a way, like, teach people that this is another way to play D&D. Not just, like, with the rules, but also with the setting. Like, kind of piggybacking what Austin said. The amount of people that I've seen being like, oh, this Planescape stuff is super cool. I want to run. I like convince my DM to like give us a Spelljammer in their next in our campaign or something like that. Has been really incredible. like heartening to see. Yeah. And the like Austin, the way that you had molded the campaign, which kind of inadvertently, whether you intended it or not, to kind of be sort of like a Planescape 101 type deal, because it was us just going to different planes and we kind of get like a taste of what everything is like and what. Like sort of the broad outline of it is and how it affects people and what you can encounter there was really cool. And then also your homebrew rules as well. The different stuff, making people realize that they don't necessarily have to adhere necessarily to rules as written or rules as intended. That if you don't like how a monk works mechanically, you can just change it because that's better. But
we're all the rules are not a tyrant, they're an outline so that you come in with something already built up for everyone to play with and change them if you think they don't work.
Yeah, like the whole point of the game is to have fun, so if the rules are preventing that, why wouldn't you want to bend them?
Yeah those are my thoughts on like the format of the podcast. With regards to Virla himself, my initial conception and my initial idea for him ended up being a lot different than what ended up happening. Like the broad strokes were there. Like I wanted him to be a robot, basically, with amnesia.
Boy.
The origins of how the robot came to be stranded in space. Basically, I left to Austin. But I think it was sort of in our. yeah, basically. But I think it was in our like. It wasn't session 0. It was like session -1, where basically we just kind of like even. Sessions. Yeah, like the solo sessions and even like just us talking about our characters and what we sort of expected out of the podcast, and Austin like basically like giving us a sort of a crash course on what the stuff leading up to the beginning of the podcast chronology was kind of feeling like. When I realized in that time that Virla would have been stranded for some unknown amount of time, that plus I think a little tidbit that Austin had said about how spelljammers used to be a really common thing, but now they're extremely rare. The fact that like someone has one in today's day and age is a marvel, honestly. My first thought was that Virla was like millennia old, and the event and the thing and the thing with him being adrift and stranded in space, I thought it was like centuries before he was found by Dani and the crew. And so that moment in episode 7, when Virla realized that it had only been like a little over a year since him being lost, was legitimately relieving both to me and him, because now that means that like, his crew is alive. But having thought that he's just like this ancient robot or whatever, my initial thought for him was basically like a creature undergoing a transformation, essentially. He was one thing, and now without any of the burdens of what he was before, he has the potential to be something new. That's why that story that he told in session 5 was so poignant to him, because realizing that he could be something else, or someone else, really sort of got to him. The way that I initially saw Virla, it was someone who was very lawful neutral, but then after realizing, and very organized and meticulous, and even by Warforged or Mechanite standards, he was a bit of a perfectionist. But then my idea was that after this event, and then after meeting Dani, and I think to some degree Dani imprinting on Virla and making him, helping him be a little more chaotic, he realized that, you don't have to just learn things for the sake of learning and having this knowledge. There is an inherent beauty in learning more and gathering as much stuff as possible. And so he still had the same goal, but with a different mindset. And then all of that got flipped on its head again when he realized that through Maxim, he's always been like this. And so I think in Virla, sort of thinking now like how he would be feeling post episode 8, he still sort of holds those ideas of identity and being someone new important. But there's also I think he really enjoys the fact that he has always been like this. Yeah. And also, like, there's that whole stuff about him being super traumatized by the fact that he lost his whole crew. There have been moments throughout the episodes where Virla, whenever his friends are threatened, or whenever he is reminded of his old crew, he sort of shuts down and becomes a bit more colder, a bit less emotional, a bit more robotic. And I think Austin had sort of zeroed in on that and sort of mentioned that in one of the Wednesday Q&As on Twitter. But yeah, that was very much intentional.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just derail this too quickly. I want to say, did you know going into the character that Virla was going to have this like Ghost Terminator mode aspect to his character? You did?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Go red. We know.
Yeah, because it shocked me when you did it the first time, and then every time after, I was like, I'm surprised. And I was like, I shouldn't be surprised. Virla showed this is how he does it.
Yeah. It was very much a deliberate choice that I had made, that he, for whoever he was before, the event that made him lose all those memories, he very much cared for that crew, and realizing very much so afterwards that he had lost it to him. And I don't know, it's like because what wasn't mentioned and what happened in the session -1 is that he was aware of the events that directly led to him losing his memory. I believe something happened that caused him to black out, and then when he came to, everyone was gone. There were no bodies, there were no remnants. It was a ghost ship. The Githyanki who had taken him were gone. He had no idea what happened. And then there was some period of time where he basically had to do triage on the Paraspora and basically get it back to even just like a functioning state where he could just even survive. And then that's when he kind of went to sleep, and then Dani found him. But he was so lonely during that time, and that got to him. And so he was very much grateful to have a new crew. But anytime that he's reminded of the fact that he lost his first crew, it shut him down. So, that was deliberate. I intended that.
Heartbreaking.
But all that
stuff.
all that because I knew that the payoff of this sense of family thing, because I had a sense that Austin was having season 1 kind of be like, this is how the crew gets together. I knew that those ideas that I had for Virla would mesh well with that as well. And it did. Like, he's by season 8 even. Or season 8, wow. Whatever.
Season 8
buckle
Flash
the fuck
forward
up.
to the future.
By episode 8, even, after realizing that not only does he remember his crew now, like the names of his crew, but that they could potentially be alive, maybe, was so relieving to him. And then now he has I'm not going to go so far as to say, but he kind of has a permanent friend and docent now, that he really did sort of like open up a bit more emotionally in that last episode. So
Exquisite.
Beautiful.
I'm interested to see where he goes.
I'm interested too. I want to see what the robot does. I was just going through us in order of whose Discord window is where, so by that logic, I'm next.
Tell us about how you feel about season 1 and Dani.
Yeah.
Share. Go ahead, share.
Okay, I'll take the sharing stick. So
you have the conch.
Yes. So for those who don't know in the audience, I produce the show, which means that I do all the prep work and edit it. Anything that's not story-based is probably me behind the scenes. So a lot of my thoughts going into season 1 were more focused on the tech side and how can I play a character and have a good time, but still like not be thinking so much that I kind of don't have time to keep track of all the logistics. So for Dani, when I developed her, I really was just like, here's a pure character. Is very, very simple motivations, very like, comprehensible. How can I just like go play and like see what happens as I let her experience the world, right? So that's why she has like very little in terms of backstory going on, street rat, riffraff, work to the heap. That's the gist of what I sent Austin. She got a little buddy plug. But I've been really enjoying getting to, like, actually react to the world. Because, when you come up with a character like that, you don't really know what they're going to turn into. And I think what she's turned into is a fucking blast.
Oh, yeah. In more ways than one.
Literally.
Literally and figuratively.
Well, nice to know we all made the same joke.
Yeah.
She sort of teed it up.
Yeah.
So going into each session, I slowly but surely developed a few goals. Most of them were just have a good time, and tied into that was make Austin do an exasperated sigh, which I feel like the audience has probably picked up on by now. Make Noir do that laugh he does when we have the exact same dumb thought at the same time. You can see an example of that in the Home Alone discussion from episode 4.
God.
And so, kind of like in line with that, in season 2, I'm excited to maybe go a little deeper with Dani and get to see more of what makes her tick beyond just fun, funky street rat with a penchant for fire. I think that's what her origin was, but she's very flexible, and I'm excited to see how her experiences, and particularly, the death of a friend of hers, Egan, is going to affect her going forward.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to spend a little more time in the city of Brass, too. We'll see, what happens in the future. Now that it is coded as the city of Philadelphia, it might mean that I might need to make a little crash course for Austin, but... there's a lot of things I'm looking forward to in season 2, so nailing down just one is hard to say, but I'm excited to see how the character grows and develops now that I can focus a bit more on her as a character and less on like how to make this show function. So
yes, good.
Yeah, that's sort of my take on the last 2 seasons. And of course I do intend on getting more fire spells. Do not fear. Fireball
More
is
fire.
en route. As soon as I level up high enough to get it, it is going to get added to that. I think it actually is technically always prepared according to the Artificer class that I am.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of your expanded list node spells when you get third level spells at level 9.
That's what Scorching Ray
caster.
is as well. So it's one of those that I just like, even if I wanted to not have it, I couldn't. So I am very pleased with how that's turning out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But that's me handled. So Wally, tell us a little bit about, closing thoughts on season 1 and what you're looking forward to in the future.
Oh God. Season 1. It's brand new table. I've only played with Austin. Having to meet Noir, Sophia, and Red, just fantastic players. Absolutely brilliant. I could not ask for a better table. Also, it was an opportunity for me to play a different kind of character. Normally, I play more abrasive, more chaotic characters. So Finbar was a bit of a challenge for me at times, but I think I did a decent job.
A very much needed calming influence at the table.
What people don't know is how much Wally's playing against type by playing the dash character.
The realization that you play like evil characters, and that seems to be kind of like your niche, and then it's was a slap in the face to me personally.
This just raises the question of like, how do we complete Finbar's inevitable arc into, like, how do we make Finbar the big bad evil guy?
So much.
Season 2 episode, Finbar gets temporarily turned evil and we are all screwed.
Let's just hope we never have to meet evil Finbar, okay?
Yeah.
It scares me.
Hold on, I gotta write down an evil Finbar question.
I broke the cardinal rule of D&D. Never give the DM any ideas that would be worse than the current status quo.
But yeah, no, this was like a fantastic first season. I don't think it could have gone any better. I couldn't ask for a better table, better DM. I'm just happy to be here.
Aww. Thanks, Finbar. Is there something
Was
in
there
specific
anything-
you're looking forward to in season 2?
Season
from
2.
Evil Finbar, of course.
Okay.
It's happening.
Austin knows, like, I think about D&D and role playing all the time and storytelling. And I have a list of interesting ideas that I could pitch to him, something he could play around with. And maybe it'll be like a fun side shot or a subplot going into this new season. Let's make it a little juicy. If I can't play a chaotic character, I can at least suggest a chaotic.
You can sow the
adventure.
seeds of dissent, even if you aren't the one actually causing the chaos.
Only Austin knows what I'm talking about, but maybe placing a bag of beans somewhere might,
Yes.
Oh no.
The
legendary
bag
of
magic
beans.
items are
If-
the best magic items.
Here's-
in the game.
I'm scared that he's talking about something entirely different.
I actually have a really quick question for Wally before we move on to Red, which is Wally. Okay, so context. Wally, we lived together for a couple months, and during that time, I only ever saw you cook either an omelet of 5 eggs or the most rice and beans I've ever seen at once. So what made you decide you wanted to be a culinary guy in this campaign?
I like to stretch my feet. I'm a very simple guy in terms of the food that I eat. I'm not very picky, and I'll eat for sustenance. So being able to play something completely opposite of that is just like, okay, how do I just like not be me for a solid 3.5 hours at the table?
And it makes our season 1 opening omelet fight even more appropriate and apt.
Yeah, wow.
Your 2 dishes.
Oh, I had to start with an omelet because
zone.
an omelet is the fanciest thing I can cook. So
the real question: do you put
5
eggs
eggs
on it?
5 eggs, you said?
That's a pretty big omelet.
I have a famous 8-egg omelet. Yes.
Whoa.
8 egg?
Yes.
That's got to be like an inch thick in the middle.
You guys have never seen Wally eat an
It's-
entire pack of Oreos in a sitting.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Hopefully you guys never have to see me eat that much. So
Incredible.
it's not pretty.
Wow, we're getting some deep lore this time.
Yes, truly we've unraveled we're pulling at the threads that make each of us, like, not just the characters that we play, but the people that we are. Jumping on. Yeah, please.
I have a question for Wally.
Oh no.
The first season was kind of like a lot of the plot points relied were focused kind of a lot on Kyana, a little bit on Virla, kind of in like 6, 7,
right,
whatever. But just like that one little taste of like going into the Feywild and realizing that you have this like big ass family, and then also just like throughout the season, you mentioning just sort of like this chef's guild raises the image of someone who has kind of a lot planned for Finbar, like in terms of backstory, but just we didn't have a chance to like get into that.
Code of plot hooks on that one.
Yeah, I'd like. I don't know if you had any expectations regarding like stuff that you intended to come out during season 1 that inevitably will probably come to light in season 2.
I have like 5 pages of backstory.
Oh no.
But Finbar is inherently a very grounded character. And I think that's important to have in a party of characters that we have. So it was important for me to create a character that's a little more involved in the world around him. So I kind of went a little crazy and I shoved whatever I could in there. Chef's Guild, big family in the Feywild.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I just really want to see more of Finbar.
Like, what's the deal with Annalise? Can we talk about that?
Oh, her? Yeah. Don't worry about it. You don't really want to know about it.
Ooh.
Don't make it a thing, guys.
What I love about Finbar is like he's clearly like bristling with plot hooks, but they're all just so normal for him that he's like, oh yeah, I might have like a blood vendetta against this guy. It's whatever. We'll take care of it. Like don't worry about it. And it's just so delightful. It's like,
how can I? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the crew has a lot of things happening to them. Kyana's constantly getting kidnapped. Dani's blowing things up. So the things going on in Finbar's life don't really take front seat to a lot of the
with so many
adventures.
characters, it's like, oh, I can't wait for them to find out my backstory and how deep I am. With Finbar, it's like, we don't need to deal with this right now, okay? We're fine. Everything's cool. Have some snacks.
Yep.
That's part of the fun. Is like I loved. Yeah. Real quick, I want to say that you guys all gave me such wildly different amounts and types of backstory. Virla, Noir, you came at me with like this very solid character concept, but your like character has amnesia. And I was like, okay, cool. So I have all the space I can play in, but I know like what the end, like I know where the story I write has to end, because this is what you're giving me about your character already. Sophia, for Dani, you gave me, it was just like bullet points. You were like, yeah, like this is her vibe, this is where she's from, this is a bit of the deal. Like, okay, so there's, I can fill in some like characters here. That's where Otto was sort of like an us creation, unlike some other NPCs that are just me. Otto was very much like, we both like kind of came up with this character. Red, you gave me, you were like, monk question mark. Also,
we'll get there when I get my turn.
You basically gave me a race in a class, and you were like, I don't know, like she runs away or something. And
the arms were your idea, even. So
were they? You were like. Yeah, I feel like you were like, pitch me on something. I was like, okay, so here's some ideas, and we eventually ended up where we are. Wally wrote me like 5 pages of backstory.
Ooh, yeah.
It was huge.
God.
And we actually played through a ton of it in his session 0.
Just a little bit.
You got to see like a bunch of stuff that he had written about, which was really fun to like take the thing that he had written about, like, oh, I was back home and I had this fight with Displacer Beasts and Blink Dogs, and I got to be like, here's that combat.
Yeah, that was fun.
You lived through it now, which is super fun. But
fancy.
That's so fun.
This is all to say that Finbar has like so much, but because none of it was particularly providing like conflict at the time, it was I wanted to give a sprinkle of it, which is why I went to the Feywild. Originally my idea was that it was going to be an adventure for the Gorman Guild. It was going to be for the Searing Tongue.
Oh, that would have been fun.
And you guys were going to learn about that piece of his backstory. But a little bit before we even started recording, I changed my mind and I said, no, I want to go to the Feywild because it'll be a nice place compared to where they've been so far.
Yes,
and I think it'll give more context for Finbar than the Gorman Guild. That being said, I'm not going to really say much about season 2 right now, but guarantee you there will be a Gorman Guild adventure. We will get to see the Searing Tongue and a little bit of how Finbar interacts with them. So,
it's incredible that basically the amount of plot relevance everyone's backstories had is like the opposite of the amount of
inversely
proportional to how much information they gave Austin at the top of the season.
That's how much freedom you give the DM.
Yeah, exactly. And that sort of leads us into our last member of the cast here to kind of close out the season discussion before we get into some of those fan questions. Red, Kyana, what's some of your closing thoughts on season 1, and what are you looking forward to coming up in the future?
I mean, season 1 was an absolute party because I've mentioned this before. I've never played 5e before this. I was a 3.5 gal all the time, and like. So I'd never done an actual Play D&D podcast. I'd never played with this kind of group, and I'd never played in this game system before, and I'd certainly never played a Planescape adventure. So, like, the way I saw it, my options were either do an absolute butt ton of research about the Planescape, or play to my strengths and make a character who has no fucking clue what's going on.
Iconic.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to play someone from the Prime Material Plane who just doesn't know very much about the Planescape in general. And I wanted to play, again, just kind of, it's like, it's 5e, we're going to be recording this. I don't want to play something too complicated that it's going to take me too much time to figure out how they work. And so I was like, okay, what's a good class? And, at this point, a lot of people had locked down, like, character concepts, and I was like, I feel like we don't have, like a heavy close combat hitter right now. So, well, may as well do a monk. And I kind of just started bouncing this idea of Austin. We brought this up a little bit earlier, that I basically came to you with, like, I'm thinking like monk from somewhere kind of isolated in the Prime Material Plane, who's like reason d'etre is like she really wants to see the world overall. Other than that, I'm not hundo%, like maybe she was like part of something that she was starting to get the feeling wasn't so great, and so she kind of ran away, and you were like, okay, yeah, cool, what are you thinking, race-wise? And I was like, well, I didn't really want to do the basics, because, it feels like every 5e character I see is like a Tiefling or a Goliath or an Aasimar, and like nobody even plays the normal, like the stock 3.5 races anymore. I was like, I kind of want to see if I can play a character who appears normal, but is very much not, and probably doesn't even know that. And I was looking through the options. I was like, Kalashtar looks interesting. I don't know enough about this particular thing to know all the details right off the bat. Let me see if that sounds good. And you were like, yeah, that sounds good. We can work that. You might want to look into the Way of the Astral Self for that. And I was like, oh yeah, that could be cool. And the thing is, this was one of those things where this character really only works if she doesn't fully know what's going on with her thing. So I couldn't be like, it would be great if this monastery was like a secret conspiracy of these bad guys and they want to do this thing, but I have no idea. I was like, I'm thinking this maybe, what do you think? And then you're like, all right, like write up a couple details and then, we can do this. Like, what was your thought process? Whatever the stuff was. And I was like, okay, yeah, here it is. And he's like, okay, yeah. So we kind of just ended up back and forthing this thing where it's like, okay, well, here's what you know about your situation. And then when we did my session -1, we kind of talked through a lot of that and just like, there's something so freeing about playing a character who has no goddamn idea what's happening and very little curiosity to find out. Kyana has like one priority in life, and it's like having a good time and seeing the world with her friends. So she's just having a blast, and then the plot keeps intervening. So like, what I'm looking forward to in season 2 is not having to be the main character.
Yeah,
I'm really looking
that'll
forward.
Definitely be a big shift.
Yeah. I'm loving the idea of being able to like be a supporting character in somebody else's role for a while. Just, like able to like run around and just do the punchy stuff without getting kidnapped. I feel like, sometimes there are players who play D&D who kind of have a bit of main character syndrome about them where it's like, this has to be about me and I have to be the coolest person. And I really didn't want to do that. I do not like that play style because I think there's a lot to gain from playing out being a supporting role. I think one of my favorite moments in the first season was just when we just had that completely organic moment where Kyana and Finbar just kind of had this little conversation on the deck where like Kiana's kind of freaking out because she's trying very hard to focus on her one priority and other shit keeps happening and making things scary and unpleasant. And then Finbar just calms her down and grounds her. And like, obviously we didn't plan that, but it worked so well. And I was like, this is such a beautiful moment. And you couldn't have that if everyone here was like, no, this has to be about me now. we must focus on I, the star. And I'm looking forward to being able to play that role in other people's personal arcs next round and being like, yeah, that sounds complicated. Let's have a snack and like look at how pretty the stars are or something.
This is all as almost everyone's D&D campaigns are. This is all improvised, but I would like to request that maybe in season 2, Kyana takes some cooking lessons from Finbar because that would be so cute.
I can reach the things on the high shelves. Yeah. And I guess I could just walk up the wall if I couldn't. So we're fine anyway.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, so for the 1,000th time, thank you, Red, for playing along with it, which is a very tough position to be in, the main character syndrome. So thank you for playing along. Also, thank you for playing a character that was the audience surrogate.
Yeah.
It really... I was writing down ideas, obviously, for episodes before you guys even had characters, because, just planning ahead is a good thing. But you being an audience surrogate really snapped the whole thing into place.
Oh, I'm so glad.
In a way. And so I was really happy for that. And choosing... When you chose the Cow Star, and then I was like, oh, well, Cow Star is all about this, like, inner being, and that's exactly what the Astral Self Monk is about. It was like perfect. Yep. And so I suggested that I had forgotten that. Yeah, I suggested the Astral Self. And then I was like, okay, I sat down with a blank Google Doc. And I was like, okay, what is the monastery? And I was like going back and forth, like working on other things, kept coming back to it. And I was just like, I know it's like gotta be real bad. It's gotta be sinister.
It can't be just a little evil.
My idea, I kept coming up with like, why are the monks there? If I know why the monks are there, it'll fall in place. And my girlfriend Victoria, she goes, oh, there's this book, and actually she wrote it down for me so I wouldn't forget to shout it. It's called Never Let Me Go, and it's all about kids who find out that they're clones who exist for their organs to be donated back to the originator. And I was like, like basically people being raised for slaughter. And that's when I clicked in, and the whole planescape, like the whole illithids are the scourge of the planescape fell into place. And I was like, to me, the juice of the ill, like the defining characteristic,
please
is
don't
their
say
just
juice of the ill.
fucking hubris.
Don't do that.
They're hubris. Like they're so big on themselves, so stupid that they just keep making the same mistake over and over again. And I was like,
so funny.
This would just be another one of those. It's just another lead up, and it really clicked into place. So thank you for all those seeds you gave. It really created a great villain. I think that really captured the Planescape for the first season.
And it's great because it's enforced method acting because I have no idea how the Planescape works as an actual player. Like, the player, know about illithids. So that one I had to be like, no, Kyana, we don't know about illithids. Shush, stop remembering that you read through the Book of Aberrations 3.5.
There's a moment in, like, one of the, not quite episode 7, but, like, I think maybe the episode 6 or so, where I think Wally, myself, and maybe Noir all like simultaneously had the moment of like, oh my god, this sounds so much like mindflayers, and like made an offhand joke about it, and then like, you know, like an episode later it paid dividends. But you know, Kyana, Red and Kyana by extension, like I think is a really important member of the party for a lot of reasons. You know, audience surrogate, prevented a lot of the plot. But I think it's this season was a lot about assembling the team, getting the band back together, and in many ways, Kyana is the glue of the party. Virla, Dani, and Finbar are all tied to the ship primarily, and then to each other by extension. But Kyana is really tied to the crew more so than the ship. You know, we, as you'll see in Session 0, we find her, take her in, and this is how the gang gets together. Yeah. Potato.
Stuff.
And so, you know, in a lot of ways, Kyana's attachment to all of us then, you know, really solidifies the bonds the group has. She's our glue. So, you know, getting through a lot of what makes Kyana tick in season 1, I think, is important to assembling the team. And I'm excited to see how now her newfound, like, freedom is really going to play out in season 2.
I'm very excited.
Yes. But this has been excellent.
Yeah, you nailed it. Good. That was extremely well put.
Thank you. I try really hard all the time in these things.
Oh, man.
But on that note, let's bring it to the end of the just sort of cast thoughts. We've got a lot of really great questions coming from you guys, our dear listeners, that you guys have emailed us with some very fun and juicy things, some dumb fun, some like really thought-provoking, and I'm excited to jump into them. So these questions came from some of you guys. We asked for fans to email us in their pressing questions about season 1, and you responded in force. We've got a number of them to get through, and I'm very excited to answer them. Just to note, like if you asked a question that we answered at the top of the show, I might just refer you back to there. I appreciate everyone sending in questions about Session 0 in particular, but it's happening, it's coming out, so I don't want to give out too much details about what happened during it, because you'll be able to listen for yourself. But without too much further ado, let's jump right in. This question comes from Joseph. Been meaning to ask this on Twitter for a while, but kept forgetting. The flamethrower on the ship, is it on a swivel mount on the front deck, or is it held by a figurehead at the front? I initially thought there was just a statue holding the flamethrower that could be controlled by Dani somewhere on the ship. So how is the flamethrower attached to the front of the ship? Austin, before I give my headcanon, do you have any like actual mechanics behind this?
Yeah. So I have to check about the swivel. I think it is on a swivel because it just has a range. It has a range, and it just shoots a straight line. So it's sort of like Virla's lightning bolt, but it's fire, and it's a little bit less damage. And it's something you have to sit in. It's got a chair that grants you cover, actually. So it's sort of like sitting in the Millennium Falcon
there it is.
blaster thing. So you have to like the gunner, you have to get in it and turn it around. And I believe it's an action to fire and then an action to reload. So you can't just do it over and over again. But
so if I summon the cannon and sit in the chair, I can use my action to use the flamethrower, and bonus action use the cannon flamethrower.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Okay, you put the cannon on the end of the flamethrower like a bayonet, but with more fire.
A bayonet that's a smaller gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't believe nobody's thought of this before.
What about second?
That's exactly how that works.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty much what my headcanon was for it, so I'm glad we're on the same page. One brain cell, 2 player.
It's an item from the book Descent into Avernus that I've sort of just jury-rigged because it's a modular piece you can put onto the different hell vehicles. Mm-hmm. So I basically was just like, yeah, it can go in a Spelljammer. You're just gonna have to retrofit it, and of course, Dani is more than capable of doing that.
That sounds a little Warhammer 40k. It's like, oh, you can just swap in one of these gazillion big guns, but they all have different point costs. So.
I don't think the Paraspora currently has a figurehead, but I think that as a party, we should seriously look into coming up with one because it would be very funny.
Oh,
what if we just got like a wooden carving of Plug and put that on the front?
Yeah. Or alternatively, to save on cost, we just have Plug sit on the front of the ship very still.
Only we gotta like tie Plug to the ship, and I don't think he would like that very much. We could just get a chunk of wood, and then every time someone adds a new funky little dude to the campaign, we just carve another one in because we've got Plug, Bing, the Pixies, the Cannons, now Docent, kind of Kyana's astral self.
Technically Kyana's astral self.
Yeah, once we figure out what my astral form fully looks like, we can sculpt it on the figurehead.
We just
until now, it's just the arms and the face.
We collect more funky little dudes.
Perfect.
Amazing. So this next question comes from a harmless drudge, the mod of r/rolling with difficulty. Shout out.
Oh.
To all, it seems most players and DMs have at least one major gripe with 5e. What are yours, and overall, how do you think it compares with past editions and any other TRPG systems you have used? So,
bud.
The look that
let's
Austin
try to keep this brief, Austin.
Please keep this brief.
No. I don't actually have anything to say
hour.
because I feel like I don't know. Someone go before me.
I have some thoughts. So
please.
I started in actually on Pathfinder and then jumped into 3.5 before ever playing 5e. But I think that 5e does something incredibly well that is kind of its greatest strength and also its greatest weakness is that it's a really good entry point for new players. It's really pared down in terms of mechanics. And while there's certainly a lot of math going on, it's much easier to pick up than like 3.5 ever was. But because of that, if you are an experienced player, sometimes it can feel a little bit too pared down. It's a problem that I run into with a lot of software where when it becomes too user-friendly, it almost circles back around to being user-unfriendly. And this is not necessarily to throw too much shade at 5e, because I personally really like playing it. I'm a big roleplay player, more so than combat, which might shock the audience, but I normally play bards. And so, 5e is very conducive to roleplay because it's a pretty simple system. But I think, if you don't have a mix of new players and experienced ones at the tables and you're all experienced players, 5e can almost feel a little bit basic. And I know that's not a very specific gripe with 5e, but it's probably the one critique of it that I can call to mind off the top of my head. And also to just give Pathfinder a shout out. It's a fun system to play if you're interested in trying something else out.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to my gripe, just because, as mentioned, 3.5 was my game system of choice. And I've played other game systems. I've played Shadowrun, Champions, Exalted, a little bit of White Wolf, World of Darkness, stuff like that. And I like 5e because it is so simple that it's a really solid foundation that allows you more freedom. Like you said, it's a really good system for roleplay, but also, once you have a map, combat is pretty loose, free form. It's you might only have a couple actions you can take per round, but it's once you're high enough levels, you've got a lot of interesting things you can do with your reactions, your bonus actions. You can spend some class points to do other fun stuff. It kind of gives you this feeling of freedom, like you're not fighting the game. And there are some systems I've run into where it does kind of feel like you're wrestling with the system. I briefly played some Numenera, which is an extremely pared down game system, but it's so pared down that you basically only have one useful thing you can do in any combat situation, and it's just waiting for your turn to come around so you can do that again. Not great. That said, I really do miss the complexity and complete unbalancedness of 3.5. I had a full bookshelf's worth of the supplements. I loved those books. I loved the illustrations and how every time you could get a whole book just as tie-ins for individual classes. The complete scoundrel was for the rogue tie-ins, which was just delightful. And I every time we'd go to the game shop, I'd be oh my god, they have 7 3.5 books I don't have yet. We need to get Monster Manual Volume 5. And I just I love some of you guys collect dice. I collected those books. And I just miss it. There would be just weird stuff buried in random books, like 5e. Like I said, I wanted to play a player race that I thought was interesting, because basically it's you can play a baseline character. You can be a human or an elf or a half elf or whatever, or you could be one of these 4 exciting options, which are also basically the same. You can be a tiefling, a Goliath, an Aasimar, or Genasi. And I was those are cool, but it's not that expansive, really. It's every character I see from somebody is that's a cool design for a tiefling, that's a neat design for a genasi, and I just like the creativity afforded by just having a world full of just weird shit. And 3.5 was so good at the world full of weird shit. There would just be races you just find in some random tie-in book that have a completely different stat block than anything else, but look like normal humans but aren't, and I'm oh man, you could spring this on so many players, this would be wild. So 5e is so pared down, you almost don't get that. And I've mentioned before my love of stacking templates, which you can't do at all in 5e because that was a 3.5 exclusive. And it was broken as hell, but it was really funny. So yeah, it's pros and cons. The strengths of 5e are also the things that I miss about other game systems, but that's kind of how it works. It's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to actually come in with a counter to all of that, which is that I don't think anything you said is wrong. I agree. But also, I think that there's a lot of things that people who are into 5e say is that 5e is really easy to get into, which is true compared to 3.5 and Pathfinder and your other big heavy hitters in terms of like sword and sorcery, combat simulation things. But compared to like role-playing games, I don't think 5e is very easy to learn. I think explaining to a player that spellcaster level and spell level that you cast at are different things. The fact that a melee weapon attack and attack made with a melee weapon are two completely different things is not grokkable, I think, by a lot of people.
At least they've made the grappling easier.
I think that the real strength of 5e, it is easier than those other ones. That's definitely true. I think that the real strength is that it's very hackable. Once you get it, it's pretty easy to like. It uses a lot of naturalistic language that's very easy to interpret. It's very easy for the DM to make a ruling that might not be technically correct, but that is plausible and agreeable by the table at the time, and that keeps the game moving, which is huge. But in terms of it being like less about combat, more about role player, I think it's still almost entirely about combat. I mean, look at any features you get as a character. Look at most spells deal damage, and basically all class features are about combat. And I think look and compare that to, I haven't played a lot of other RPGs, but one that I played for a little bit I really liked was Monster of the Week, where there were whole abilities that were just role playing. I was the genius or the expert I think I was playing, and it was like, I get to have like a secret base with all this stuff, and like it was all about role play. Like all of your mechanics were about role playing, and if you got into combat, you had done something very wrong. Something had gone horrendously wrong, and probably someone was going to die if you didn't have a chosen one to save your ass.
But I kind of like that the RP is so unregulated in D&D, because it's like it's a strength and a
I think a lot of the things with any TTRPG system is like what's its strength is often also its weakness. It's like, D&D is
you gotta be one thing.
It's big, it's famous, it's the big name in the TTRPG game. But I like it as an entry point to the genre of games, because I encourage listeners to, if they like D&D and they've enjoyed playing it, branch out into some of those other RPGs, because then that's where you get some of those fun, definitely RP focused ones. That's where you get other genres. A lot of people like to adapt D&D 5e into other genres, like doing it sci-fi or whatever, and that's totally an option. We kind of do that. But there's other systems like Starfinder that are just made for running that. So, I think the TTRPG space is much more expansive than the person just getting into it initially might realize, and while D&D 5e is an excellent entry point, I encourage people to explore other game systems as well.
Yeah, that was a heavy question. We could probably do 2 hours on that.
I don't think we're done though yet. Like Wally and Noir haven't had a chance to chime in yet.
I'm trying to simplify my simplify my thoughts.
Exactly. Noir, do you have anything to say? Oh, go on.
Okay,
like the biggest strength of the 5e system is the bounded accuracy that they've more or less tightened up. And like there's the math works within like a certain range of numbers. And from like a strict like game design standpoint, when you're trying to design encounters, items, weapons, etc., it's very rigid. And there are some subclasses that fail. There are certain adventure books that fail in making sure it falls within that they're expecting you to have a certain number of items, a certain amount of gold, et cetera, and because it's so easily to adapt when most people homebrew it, one of the dangers they fall into is they break bounded accuracy. And that's when all of a sudden you're like, technically you're no longer really playing 5e anymore. You're just skinning the D&D world with your own mechanics. And I encourage homebrew. I love homebrew. But at some point you need to realize that it is a game. There are mechanics to it, and taking the time to understand the language and the numbers behind it. And once you do, there's a surprising amount of room to not just the combat, but some of the social situations. And I guess my biggest gripe for 5e is that a lot of the lore is just stuck behind wikis or old D&D mags. So I wish Wizards of the Coast would just just instead of trying to come up with new content, just refine what they already have. And publish the they have 40 years worth of lore that
Yeah,
I'm sure the fans would love to hear.
My dad and his brothers all played D&D second edition when they were younger, and one of them gave me all of their second edition books recently that they found in the attic, and I've just been flipping through like all this lore. I'm like, wow, there's so many numbers I don't understand in here, and then also weirdly accurate descriptions and so many more spells and things. So
yes,
it's always interesting. Yes. The spell list was crazy in second edition.
Yeah.
My parents played AD&D in college, and like the kind that came in pamphlets, and they're regular. Like back in my day, you know.
Yeah.
But we didn't have monsters with class levels.
The original D&D was found in three little books, and it was $10 for the 3 books, which was the most expensive RPG at the time.
Oh my god.
Someone's been watching actually, because I'm pretty sure that was a question on there.
Was it? I
thought you were going to say Matt Colville.
Yeah.
It's a Matt Colville thing.
Noir, before we move on to the next question, do you have any thoughts on 5e?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was kind of stuff that people had touched on. Austin saying that wow, the moment it comes to me, I completely blank. The thing, I haven't. 5e was my first foray into D&D. I was a senior in high school. Critical Role had just kind of into their first year, and that was like it was like the textbook. Like, oh, I hear about this Dungeons and Dragons thing. Let's try it or whatever. Yada yada yada. But I have played some other. TTRPGs since then. You mentioned the concept of people kind of trying to fit the D&D system into other genres, which interestingly the Dungeon Master's Guide has like this workshop section or whatever that's like, hey, here's a gun if you wanted to use that, and like a grenade, and like if you oddly enough, at least from what I can understand, Wizards of the Coast did try to make their attempt of making the system more applicable in other genres, but then it's kind of like there are other systems. I've played a lot of sci-fi stuff, Stars Without Number. The one that really stuck out to me was this role-playing system called Scum and Villainy, and the thing that really stuck out to me and made me realize something different between that and D&D is that D&D for me seems to its mechanics are very much steeped in like 2 different sections. Combat and role-playing, and it's kind of difficult for there to be sort of like there isn't really a lot of like osmosis between the two or bleed through.
Never the twain.
It's really difficult to apply social skills like rolling. You can roll an intimidation check during combat, but that's not really something that's explicitly stated that you can do.
Right.
It's kind of something that's sort of up to the DM and something that you guys have to work out together, as Austin said. One thing that really stuck out to me in Scum and Villainy is that there isn't really combat skills. Everything is really told in sort of a narrative perspective. The abilities that you have are broad enough that it can be applied either in role-playing or in combat. Scum and Villainy didn't have, from what I remember, it didn't have anything of like, here's a gun, it does X points of damage. It's very much narrative-based of like, I want to go and shoot the guy, roll like alacrity or something like that in order to figure out if I can like dodge between these 2 pieces of cover, and then narratively it's resolved like that. And for me, there seemed to be a lot more synergy between sort of like the combat and not combat sections.
Well, it kind of seems to me that with every RPG, there's the question that the creators ask themselves is, how can we create this specific scenario and these specific characters? So like I mentioned Champions, it's an old superhero game. And like the weirdest thing about it is the character building setup, and it involves like allocating points, and you can take disadvantages to get more points. And it's like one of the example characters is so clearly Spider-Man, or like some of the things are just so clearly taken from individual characters. And the one that you get from Spider-Man is you can take the disadvantage Unlucky, which will just screw you over nonstop, but it's worth so many points. And like Exalted was clearly like, we want to create high fantasy mecha anime. We want to do all the animes at once. Let's do it. So like all the character building there is about, so you can make like a magical chosen one with a crazy destiny and like ancient magical sword and a giant robot, or you can be a werewolf.
You want to permanently have as your natural hair color, and like which one of your parents you're the least attached to,
Yeah, if you want to be the edgy werewolf type, you can do that with the rad tattoos, and if you want to be a sailor scout, you can do that. It's great. And like that's the thing, like you couldn't really stat that up in D&D. The power level is just ridiculously out of scale. you also couldn't do D&D and Champions, and you couldn't do Champions and Exalted, and you can't even do Exalted in World of Darkness, and those are made by the same guys.
That's kind of like short answer that we're all poking around at is like D&D 5e is certainly like a system that has its critiques, but it also has its strengths, and there's other systems out there that do different things better or worse. So kind of
shop around, play around with it. If you want to if you want to play horror, try the Call of Cthulhu system. You don't need to reskin D&D.
Don't get attached to your Call of Cthulhu character, but certainly try the system. But we got to move on because we got a lot of questions.
We got to move on.
So,
I knew this would happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Sam asks, "Hi, thanks for the wonderful D&D podcast. You're welcome. My question is for both Austin and Noir. Was Virla at all inspired by the nameless one from Planescape Torment? Both have no idea about their past lives. Both gradually discover who and what they were like before their mind wipe. Both gradually learn about their past companions. Am I grasping at straws, or was there some inspiration on either end?"
I don't know who that is. I've never played Planescape
Siri, what's
Torment.
the nameless one? This is my... I guess kind of tying into what we were saying, D&D 5e doesn't have a lot of lore stuff. I believe from what you were saying, Austin, your inspiration for the Planescape was a lot of like 3rd edition stuff, which I believe Planescape Torment is a part of, but the nameless one was never something that came up for me. It was basically just my own idea, and I guess it's a little heartening to know that someone else has thought of it before. So I guess I was onto something with that. But no, that's purely coincidental. It makes sense,
right? It's a strong character archetype, a strong character concept, I guess is a better word. That makes a lot of sense in this very like weird world, and especially Planescape is very. The original Planescape is ours is a Planescape Spelljammer mashup that gets a little more like high adventure. Space piratey, sort of like space westerny, like you're living in like a world that's got simultaneously a lot of space and also kind of no more space, which is kind of how I think of the Western. And the original Planescape though is more philosophically bent, so I think that makes a lot of sense for that kind of setup. Original Planescape is all about the factions. There's like 20 of them, and they all have different like philosophies that some of them relate to alignment, but others are just like real world philosophies. The Searing Tongue is actually, because in our version, those factions did exist and then have fallen apart in the history of the Planescape. Because there was a big war. We don't have to get into it. But the Searing Tongue is an offshoot from one of them, actually, that kind of survived. So interestingly enough.
Sky to listener, you've touched on an area that has certainly inspired some aspects of the campaign, but in Noir, it sounds like you didn't specifically base his character off of the nameless one.
No, I'll have to look into him.
Yeah,
though.
I think we have a new season 2 idea though.
I just ripped Planescape Torment's plot.
Yeah,
Secret Origins, Virla again this time.
Virla's our Wolverine.
Yeah.
No, we got to do the Virla, so it's the sequel. So we don't get it confused with the first one that was just Virla.
Yep. So this next question comes from Celine. Hello, all. 2 questions. 1, for the DM, are there any aspects of the game you wish you had handled differently or re-emphasized for greater or less relevance? And 2, for each of the players, what is your PC's ideal pizza configuration? Crust, sauce, toppings, etc. Obviously, someone would probably need to explain pizza to Kyana. Eagerly awaiting season 2, Celine. So we'll go through these one at a time. Question to
folks
Austin.
Go first.
No.
Pizza folks go first. I want to think about that.
Fine. Okay. Pizza folks. PCs. So Noir, Red, myself, Wally. What are our ideal pizza configurations as characters?
All right. As a New Yorker, I have to go first.
Yes, do it.
Look,
flex.
You can't go wrong with a classic pepperoni pizza. That's it. Yeah. Everything else is like, if you have your own kind of flavor, throw whatever you want on there, okay? But like a nice Long Island pizza is what you need. Or give me a dollar slice.
That's Finbar. That's Finbar's choice.
That's it. No. This is Finbar.
This is Wally.
Who cares? I'm a New Yorker. The only thing that matters is my opinion on pizza.
The most New Yorker answer you could have possibly given to this question is saying, "Who cares? Yes. I'm a New Yorker."
I once accidentally ordered a slice of pepperoni from a kosher deli, and when they were like, "What?" I was like, "Actually, mushroom, thank you." So that was
Noir.
The flip side to Wally's answer is
we
were all staying over at Austin's house one time, and I'm from California, I should say that. I'm from the Bay Area. And I don't know where they got the pizza from. But my first gut response was, wow. This tastes just like Costco pizza.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. In New York? I'm amazed you weren't shot.
Okay.
And the sad part was that I intended it. No, the sad part was that I intended it as a compliment.
Wow.
Just like,
well, now I gotta add more napalm on this fire.
Ooh, Red, light it up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Chicago.
Oh, boy.
We've got very different opinions on pizza here.
Okay. All right. My patience.
Look, I've got a great love and affection for New York pizza. It's got its place, but some days,
number one.
It's fine. It's just some days you really want about 1.5 inches of solid cheese, and then whatever toppings you're dealing with.
I'm so sorry for not actually answering the question.
Besides, rationally speaking, it makes more sense to put the tomato sauce on top of the cheese because that way it can stick to the crust.
My headcanon is now like Finbar is having a cooking class with the rest of the crew, and like Virla inadvertently pisses him off. You know what? Advertently pisses him off. Instead of trying to fake eating, now Virla has moved on to just being like, "What if I was a contrarian about the pizza?" And Kyana is like, "Oh, I can experiment with this," and creates a deep dish pizza.
You put more cheese on it, and then you put you put the sticky stuff in the middle so that it sticks, and then you put the slippery stuff on top, so it's okay. So it just makes perfect sense that way.
I'm from Philly, so I most closely align on the pizza alignment chart with New York. But Dani, as a character, is from the city of Brass, which while we know is close to being Philly, is not technically the city of Philadelphia transposed into the Planescape.
The dark reflection.
Yeah, so the style of pizza, certainly it's like, your New York, your dollar slice. But I think that Dani, with her spice tolerance, would, instead of putting marinara on her pizza, probably just put straight hot sauce and just go from,
that's okay.
Chili peppers
Some
as
sort
the
of
topping.
chili paste, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Still red, but like deceptively red. So that's probably where I think Dani's sitting. But to prevent us
thanks for trying to make that into an answer pertinent to the question that was asked.
As I said earlier in the show, I try really hard all the time. So now the next part of this question was for Austin. Have you had time to gather your thoughts?
Yes. I do have my answer. Yeah. The thing that I wish I'd done differently. It was the thing something I wish I'd done differently, right? Was the
things you'd emphasize differently, maybe.
Yeah, things I emphasize differently. So, twofold, and they relate back to each other. I think I struggle the most with improvising natural feeling dialogue. I think I think that my strength is not to toot my own horn, but I think all the different strengths and weaknesses. I think place making is a very I think it's something I love. But the weakness is coming up with dialogue, and so especially with. It sticks most firm in my memory because it's recent, but with the final episode, the confrontation between Kyana and the Illithid, I wish I'd had more time for. I felt like I sort of rushed through it. I don't know if you guys felt that way, if Red felt that way, but I felt like I rushed through it, and I feel like maybe I didn't give as many details revealing some of the secrets as I wanted to, because full disclosure, I mean, it's I've always got one eye on the clock when I'm doing these things because I have to hit certain beats for the episode. That's the weakness of doing it, doing a story like this, which is cool, but also has these restrictions. I'm always looking at the clock, so I was like, okay, I have no idea how long this final fight is going to be. I don't know if they're going to go after the rest of the mind flayers afterwards. I was like, I gotta chew through this confrontation, and I wish that there would just been more time for that. And in general, I wish that there had been more time to do NPC interactions with you guys. It's also very hard over computer because you never know when someone's gonna try, especially with Red, because Red for technical reasons doesn't have her camera on.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I'm
never sure when she's waiting to say something, and I'm stepping on her toes. So that final confrontation, I do wish I had revealed more details. And in general, I worry that while it makes perfect sense in my head, trying to unveil secrets over time, I skip things or I don't make things clear. But you guys seem to have picked up most of the stuff, so that would be something I wish that I had done differently. Is maybe I will often bullet point things I want NPCs to say, but I wish I'd written out maybe just a little bit more for some of those interactions.
if I can assuage that concern, I think it actually makes perfect sense for the mind flayers to not be super interested in explaining their plans to like just some random nobodies. I think it would make more sense if like now that we've like messed up their base and stolen all their guys, they're gonna be like, oh, these fucking guys, and like it's personal now. But I think until then it kind of makes sense that they were just kind of like, it's not worth telling these guys anything. They're gonna turn into mind flayers in like 10 days, so it's fine. So
that is true. Yeah. There was a very real threat of you becoming a mind flayer, which would have changed season 2, because season 2 would have started with you guys having to find a way to stop that.
Yeah, what I'm looking forward to season 2 is not having to deal with that.
Oh, excellent.
That's my answer.
Austin, you did mention the difficulty sort of like coming up with dialogue in the moment thing. A funny consequence of that is that you and I were so focused on like the whole Maxim and Verla conversation. You told us after the session you completely forgot that Maxim has the ability to take out Dani's blueness.
Oh yeah,
he has great
Dani
because he's a
we
clone
have
of
to
soul.
address this. Blue Dani was completely unplanned. I did never in a million years anticipated that the magic effect of the Wild Magic Surge
baby.
would be the blue one. But Blue Dani has become such a critical fan favorite that I don't know if I now could, in good conscience, unblue Dani.
Yeah. It would have to
Dani
be
for all seasons.
Yeah.
It either was going to have to be immediately afterwards, so it was like this fun little quirk for an episode, or it's going to have to wait for a big moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I think
the series finale is Dani becomes no longer blue. Like,
or possibly even turning a different color.
Yeah.
You have a Fiona-style
Green
magical
Dani?
girl transformation.
Green
Dani.
Like dying
Dani.
and being resurrected would probably remove the curse from you. So that would be like a big thing.
Dead Dani?
Right, okay.
Wait. Does the person who resurrect her turn blue?
Oh, you have to take my
pass it
blueness
on?
on in order
It's
to
a
raise
curse
me.
that's
It's
transferred.
transferable. Yes.
Ooh.
This is
Alternatively-
ponderings for the future, but
Alternatively, reincarnate keeps the person blue.
so like I
despite
come
the
back as
blue
like a
no matter
drow,
what.
but like blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That'll be confusing.
Well, these are great headcanons, but we've got more questions to get through. So this one comes from Jack.
let's do it.
First of all, thank you all for an amazing first season. And to all, can we get a rundown of all the magical items you have? We've got a few. I'll kick us
Sure.
off because I think I have a pretty easy list to get through because I don't actually have that many. Dani tends to summon the cannons, which are an artificer feature.
Yeah. But you also make them.
I can
You
also make them,
magic
but I have
items.
not done so yet. I did at one point make a mind sharpener on my goggles, but that is now in the possession of Maxim. That essentially just gives you advantage on a saving throw. You can make a choice to use that. And I currently have Enhanced Defense active, which is another Artificer Infusion, which just gives me a +1 to my armor class. And of course, Plug, my homunculus servant, who I constantly forget actually has attacks in combat. But in terms of magical items, the only one that Dani has is the Baronium Fluctuator, which is my multi-tool. And it has a fun ability that helps me out. It gives me a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and saving throw DCs for my Artificer spells. And I can focus the tool to channel my creative forces and choose a cantrip that I don't know from any class list. And I actually forgot that it had this ability now that I'm reading the description, so maybe I should reread my spell item descriptions more. I don't know if you've noticed a running theme, but I don't read my sheet very carefully during sessions. Note, forgetting to add a D8 to every goddamn attack roll all season. But that's all Dani's got, honestly. She's a skill monkey and a jack of all trades in some ways, but not in the magic item department at the moment.
Right.
I believe the item's technical name is the all-purpose tool. Hold on. Let me look
Yeah.
at it.
Like
I
a
have
fun
it.
Give it a
little
fun name.
sonic screwdriver.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Baronium
everything.
Fluctuator sounds like a thing you made up.
Yeah, so it's hold on. Yeah, it's an all-purpose tool +1, which is just your pretty standard artificer. It gives her a +1 to her spells and the other stuff she said. But yeah, when they chose all their magic items, I gave them fun names because I think it's boring to have a all-purpose
Yes.
tool +1. I like the idea. It's the Baronium Fluctuator, which is a reference
it's a
to
Leatherman.
Edgar Rice Burroughs,
Yes.
the
Of course
author
it is.
of
A Princess of Wales.
the John Carter series. Yeah.
Yeah. What I've got, I don't have my character sheet with me, but I don't have that many. I have the Slippers of Spider Climb, which I think in lore were taken off some drow, and they just gave it to me because I do enough.
They're the handmaiden slippers. They're like signature uniform for an elite group of Lolth worshippers.
Oh, heck yeah. But they're very useful. So, and the other one is the belt that I got from, oh my God, brain, come on. Enoch, thank you so much. I knew it began with an E and it was 2 syllables, but my brain was like, it's Egan. And I was like, it's not Egan.
It's not Egan.
Yeah. And its main thing is like, it's a little +1, and also it lets me, in combat, I can roll to regain some key points, which is useful, but I've never used it. So.
Yeah. Noir, what about you? What you got? What's Virla packing?
Well, Virla has his staff of, it's an insect swarm staff, but as Austin said, it was reflavored to staff of the clockwork swarm, which is basically the same thing. The bugs are like rabbits. Which is, it's busted. 10 charges, 5 charges to cast Insect Plague, 4 to cast Giant Insect or something like that, 1 charge to cast Insect Cloud, which I feel like I did like 1 time, something like that.
You did it to get the big insects to fly Kyana.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was the only times that I used Giant Insect and Insect Cloud. Everything else has just been spam bug.
Exquisite.
I got the Scarf of Speed, which are reflavored Boots of Speed from Agden. Also apparently found among the wreckage of the Paraspora. I never used it. I got a Ring of Water Walking.
Oh, how convenient.
This is a through line from a home campaign that Noir DMs for us, and Austin's also in. I play a bard in that campaign who very early, like session 2 or 3, purchased for full gold price a Ring of Water Walking, and then proceeded to not use it for 2 real life years.
Wow.
I think the thing that I had said directly after was, congratulations, you got a Ring of Water Walking in a landlocked country.
Yes, but you know what? It's my favorite magic item in that campaign, so who
I
really...
feel like we haven't even...
Yeah.
I used it
We
once.
haven't even been on a plane with water until the final episode.
That's true.
I think in session 0 I asked... Yeah, I think I asked in session 0 if I could have feasibly walked on the Astral Sea.
Yeah.
But
Perfect.
Yeah, which is presumably why it was there. And also, I want to say for the record, the reason you had such a powerful magic item for the audience is because I told everyone at the beginning, I said, you can pick an uncommon magic item, which 3 of you did. You chose. And then I said, or you can roll for a rare magic item on the table. And Noir was like, hell yeah, I'll roll. And rolled. And just so you know, could have also got it could have gotten something completely like useless to him, like X-ray ring of X-ray vision. Like that was what he could have rolled, and that's what he would have been stuck with. But that's the gamble of the dice. Like he rolled something really good, like ring of animal influence. You know how often would that have been useful? But he rolled something super dope.
Okay, so the Ring of Water Walking, it doesn't necessarily have to be water. It's any liquid
That's
surface.
true. This is a very important point that has been brought up. Because, like, lava, magma question, like, is this liquid? Is a very important question to ask if you have a Ring of Water
Walking. You'd still take fire damage, though, right?
The age-old question.
You would take fire damage, but a lot less.
Yeah.
It's like Breath of the Wild rules, you know?
Don't
just getting near the lava can hurt.
It's just very warm. Wally, what magic items does Finbar have? Let's wrap
warm
up.
is a weird way to describe lava, but okay.
Technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Now, is it
Finbar has a couple of iconic. He has his Moonsicle, which Austin reflavored to Leyland, the Waning Blade. It essentially increases my spell save and attack, which has been useful. I have like a +8 to those. And the biggest thing is it gives you an extra D4 whenever I do healing, and that's why the crew is still alive.
Woo! Thank you, Finbar.
And we appreciate it.
The other thing he has for Finbar is he's a Furbolg, so he has powerful build. So in terms of like doing things, he has I think he has naturally has a 14 strength, which is decent. He doesn't particularly need it because he has the gauntlets of ogre power, or Austin reflavored it to the gauntlets of Fomorian power, which he's whopping 19. He can pick up the entire crew with one arm if he needed to. Then he got the Ring of Psychic Resistance. From Maxim, And then when we start with season 2, he will be wearing his Canian half plate.
The armor.
Yeah, the armor.
The armor that we paid that giant to make.
Yes, which resists cold and now does a very fun thing with lightning.
Yes.
The first roll for season 2, I asked Wally to roll a d20 to see how well the fire giant would do on his armor. He rolled a natural 20, so he got the best result.
Yeah. Incredible.
Perfect.
Well, that's our magic item corner. This next question comes from Kogashi. Hi all, really loved the first season and looking forward to more chaos to come. But part of my love for this has been renewed interest in trying to make or run campaigns myself, so my question is mostly for Austin.
Hey.
How much acknowledgement do you want or need for when I start crafting a D&D campaign around someone hiring adventurers to explore a sudden new giant hole into the Underdark where a mountain once was? Parasocially love you all. Signed, Kogashi on the OSP Discord. We're just excited that you're playing this.
Seriously. I'm excited you're playing. Take what you love and steal it. I heard someone once say the things we create are as good as the obscurity of the things we steal them from. Which is all to say that, the less your players know about what you're taking from, the more likely they're going to be amazed at what you've come up with. Mm-hmm. So by all means, don't tell them. Let them be amazed. That is the strength. And I mean, there are things in this. There have been hints in this campaign to other campaigns I've been in.
Yeah, the Ring of Water Walking, of course, is the most clear and present.
That's like a meta joke. But lore-wise, some things have been vaguely alluded to that haven't really been that important, but do give it some context. That it's just a little Easter egg for me, and makes the world seem more real. And maybe it seems like I've got more going on in the background than there really is, but it's just me taking other stuff I've heard. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The story that Virla told in episode 5, that was a myth from the home game that Sophia mentioned that I DM'd for. Blue's character, a paladin who lives in totally not Greece in all capitals.
The least surprising thing he could possibly play.
Yes.
Yeah, I made this whole pantheon with totally not Greek characters, and I just made up a couple myths or whatever, and I was like, yeah, here's one.
Yeah, very cool.
Exquisite.
So this next question comes from Sosage. With Dani continuously being called just Dani in various situations, including in the Feywild, could you see that developing into her quote-unquote true name in time? And if so, do you think it would only be in the adverb sense, or could it also be in the adjective sense? So kind of like an interesting thing with this is that Dani wouldn't know what her true name, quote-unquote, is. I think we kind of touched on this, but she named herself after a drink in the City of Brass. She was a street rat. She didn't know any other family. She doesn't know if she had a name before that. So I guess it's really a question for Austin and how the Feywild name stuff works. But would Dani be considered her true name to a trickster Fey, or is it something that not even she knows?
Interesting. Yeah. So the magic of names, which is called onomancy, has rules that I don't even fully understand yet. Maxim talks about it a little bit. When he's taking the names.
When he simultaneously realizes 3 out of 4 party members don't have last name.
When he's taking the names, he brings up that it's important, and Maxim is indeed not his real name. It's possible he hasn't told anyone his real name in a long, long time, because telling people your name makes you vulnerable if you are powerful enough and have powerful enough enemies. So is Dani her true name, and could just Dani become her true name? Maybe it's sort of unclear if it's a given name or if it's how you think of yourself. In which case, if it's how you think yourself, it's a fine line, because Maxim has gone by Maxim for a very long time, but probably to protect his identity still thinks to go to Batman Beyond and how do you know you're not crazy, Bruce?
Yes.
It's because I
in
don't
my
think,
head
I don't
that's not what
myself,
I call myself.
I don't call myself Bruce.
Yeah.
I think it's more like that. It's an involuntary, it's not a choice, but if you're very careful with it, you can morph your true name over time, or go by a different name and protect your true name from changing by keeping a firm grasp of it in your head. So could it become just Dani? Yeah. Potentially, if that's how she starts thinking of herself.
Someday, maybe. Blue Dani is slowly creeping up for the true name spot.
Yeah.
This next question comes from Ella. Hi, I'm a huge fan of the podcast and have a question for the Q&A. Will the soundtrack for the podcast ever be available on Spotify or any other music platforms, or will it just stay on SoundCloud? As well, do you think transcripts will ever be available for the show? So the soundtrack for the podcast comes from our lovely composer, Dominic Ricciardi, who you may or may not notice has the same last name as me. That's because he's my younger brother. And right now, his only plan is to post them on SoundCloud, but if he ever does post anywhere else, I will let you all know, and of course link in the show notes to whatever episode is the first one that starts with. As for transcripts, it's something I'm working on. It just takes a long time because we have long episodes and there's a lot of words that the English language normally does not compute, so you can't really just auto-generate the transcript. I can't give you a perfect estimate on when those will be out, but before season 2 happens, we will have transcripts for all of the current episodes. Sorry to just breeze through that one, but I'm glad I'm always really excited. We've gotten a lot of people who have enjoyed the soundtrack, and if you did like the songs in the back of the podcast and want to see the absolutely ridiculous names that they were all given, my personal favorite is Party Time Time, although Big Downtime has a place in my heart as well. They're all available on our composer's SoundCloud, Dominic Ricciardi, and they're linked in the show notes below. This next question comes from Kate. Hi all, loved season 1 and can't wait for season 2. Now, some questions. Number 1, was there anything that inspired your characters, as in creation of them, or a favorite character from a movie, book, a previous D&D campaign you played, etc.? Number 2, what was each member's favorite episode? Number 3, how did you make the maps? Did Austin draw them, or did he use a tool of some sort? Number 4, what do you want to see happen in season 2? 5, if Austin were to be a player rather than the DM, what kind of character would he play, and who would be the new DM? Thanks and best wishes, Kate.
Oh my goodness.
P.S. As an Aussie, I was cackling at the Aussie accent. Hilarious and occasionally plausible. You are very generous in your plausibility.
God, they weren't offended. Thank you.
Yeah, wow.
So we'll go through these one at a time. Number 1, was there anything that inspired your characters? I'll just round robin it. Noir, was there anything that inspired Virla?
Iron Giant, Baymax, and another robot character that my friend Joey played.
Nice. In a similar vein, Dani is just every anime mechanic. If you're thinking of any of them, you're probably right. Winry, Mayhatsme from My Hero. I added just a splash of Charlie Day because we got to rep It's Always Sunny.
Of course.
And I think that's pretty evident if you look at how the character is performed. Wally, what about Finbar?
Ship on biggest inspiration was Sweets. Treasure Planet.
Nice.
Yes.
And then on top of that, it's just I was hungry and I wanted to play a character better than me.
And that's why we fight.
You saw the
story of Wally's life.
Egg omelet, and you're like, hold on.
Amazing.
There's something to this.
And Red, what about? I think you've talked a little bit about Kyana, but what specifically inspired that?
Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the trope of like the good-hearted Paragon character who has no idea they're working for the bad guys. Little sneak peek of a video I've been working on. There's obviously some Adora in there, but there's also some Gallo from Promare.
Wow, that's a pull.
I got her at my himbos who are accidentally working for the bad guys, and as soon as they figure it out, are like, well, this blows. Let's get out of here.
Nice.
There's also a little bit of Avatar Aang. Austin, you pointed that out like minute 1 when I was like, Monk who ran away, and you were like, oh, okay, I know what you're going with there. Obviously rather more sinister than
movie.
Yeah, like I knew I wanted Kyana to have like some greater purpose the monks wanted her for, but she was so bored that she was like, I gotta get out of here and live my truth. And then the monks are like, wait, come back. But that's all I knew. I didn't know it was gonna be mindflayers. So like from that perspective, I was like, just like Aang. But honestly, like Kyana's just she's a very simple, fun character for me to play. So like there wasn't really much of an homage there. I just wanted something that I wouldn't mess up.
Amazing. Well, question number 2, what was each member's favorite episode? Austin, we'll start with you since you didn't have anything for the last one. What was your favorite episode of season 1?
Oh, God. I was so eager to hear you guys say that. I didn't even think about it. I mean,
on the spot.
Train heist? I mean, it's got to be the train heist, right? It's got to be the train heist. We, Wally and I played in a Descent into Avernus campaign, and the last thing before the climax was this. It wasn't a heist, but there was a train in hell, and I was like, I have to do this again. I got to do my version of this sometime. So shout out to my DM Zach for the inspiration for Train in Hell.
Yes.
And because it was such a puzzle that I had no idea how you guys were going to unpack it. That's the best D&D stuff, is when I hand you a puzzle box and I'm like, how are they going to like figure this out? And more often than not, it's like bash the box against a rock until it breaks open. But you guys really like the whole like casting shatter to separate and leave the whole train behind. was I didn't even consider that. I was like, they'll do like a stealth where they like sneak aboard, or they'll
stealth in this campaign.
They'll
hell.
I forgot you had Shatter. It was all just very very surprising in the very best way for me. So train heist.
Yeah, I thought my favorite would be the train heist, but episode 3 honestly might be my favorite episode. Something about that chase just like really hits different. I think there's a lot of really fun moments in it. It's where we get, Kyana jumping off the ship to save the mentor. We get the birth of the terrible Gith being Aussie, and therefore us doing what I consider unforgivable Aussie accents. And the hardest thing that I've had to do this entire season was trying to speak with an Aussie accent while simultaneously doing Dani's voice. Genuinely, that might have been my biggest challenge of the season. So episode 3 just has a really special place in my heart. Although I've got to put love on the train heist as well.
Oh, yeah.
Noir, what about you?
Going chronologically, I think 4 has got to be my favorite, based on how off the rails it got.
Oh yeah,
the thing that really like
that was
the fight at the end was like a great payoff, and just like the Austin making us split the party, basically me, Wally, and Sophia panicking and being like, here's how we're gonna like save Kyana or whatever, and then we all realized that Kyana was doing fine this whole time.
Something that listeners
I was like, how am I going to save everyone else?
The listeners didn't hear this, but like me, Noir, and Wally were in a separate Discord channel while Austin and Red were playing out the Kyana alone bit, and we were all just like in strategy mode. It didn't make it into the cut of the episode because of just the way that the timing worked out and everything. I think it's better that way, frankly. But we had a whole separate plan that just immediately went out the window the minute we started back into the actual campaign.
That's also my favorite, just to piggyback off of that. I love the whole Feywild arc for like a million different reasons, but how far off the rails that episode went was really funny. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And hearing like in hindsight, like how much of a like episode 3 is very funny, but also like every time I think back on it, I hurt thinking about how badly that could have gone. Whereas episode 4, I was like, oh, I'm in my element. I'm not in the spotlight now. I can just mess around. So just great for me. It's just absolutely delightful.
Yeah. What about you, Wally?
And the best part was like Dani didn't remember any of that. So.
Oh my god, that's right.
Listen,
everyone else crystal clear memories, and Dani's just like, wait, did it not work?
Not only is it a wisdom saving throw,
20s,
but I roll so well in combat that the dice gods must balance it by having me roll terribly outside of it. And that's the consequences of my own actions. So you know what? I accept it, even if it frustrates me on so many deep emotional levels.
I mean, I agree with everyone else. Like episodes 3, 4, fantastic. Battling it out on Archon giant cubes, getting those ridiculous amount of temporary hit points.
Terrifying.
Watching Kyana punch the dragon.
Oof.
Fantastic.
Really, really fun.
It got so badly.
Yeah, then Finbar going home. It's no place like home. As much as he likes being on the Astral Sea, it's great to watch, his family on the ship meet his family in real life.
Aww.
Felt like everything come together.
Beautiful.
Exquisite.
Well, this third question is mostly for Austin. How did you make the maps? Did Austin draw them, or did he use a tool of some sort? I believe you've used Incarnate for them, right?
Yeah, easy answers. I used Incarnate. It's pretty cheap. There is a free version that's not very good from what I could tell, because I tried to start the free version. And then I just got a subscription, and the subscription was very cheap, and it has a lot of options. A couple things I struggled with, but for the most part, like creating rooms that are symmetrical, like that final map, I was like beating my head against the wall, and I wish I had more time to work on it. But at some point, like all art, I was like, it's just got to be done. Like I've worked on it. It's done. I'm looking forward to maybe improving. Some people do really, really great maps with it. And it has to do with their use of lighting and contrast on the different objects that they place on the map. You can do a lot of like little fiddly stuff. But for a beginner, I think I did okay, and it's very easy to use.
They
look great.
Complete computer idiot.
When I wasn't blowing up your maps, I think that they served a very important purpose. So for the fourth question, what do you want to see happen in season 2? I think we kind of touched on this in the beginning. I'm personally excited to explore the rest of the crew's backstories a little bit and give Kyana a well-deserved break from being the main character and just let her. I love my favorite moments in every episode are when Kyana experiences a new plane for the the first time and immediately decides like I love it here or ooh this is not great. And I'm excited to get her reaction to other planes in the Planescape because we're certainly going to be going to those.
Samesies. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding new and interesting stuff because like it always feels like my exploration of the Planescape is being interrupted by these friggin' mind flayers. So I'm excited for those guys to simmer on the back burner for a while they turn into an even bigger threat. While I get to have a good time, like
we'll deal with that.
Running into other people's in jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just like it because Kyana's so relaxing to play because she knows less about what's going on than I do. So it's like method acting for me to not understand what's happening.
Yeah. What about the rest of you guys? What are we looking forward to in season 2?
Gala fight.
Yes.
I want to go to a gala.
Yeah.
I want to dress up.
Yep.
And I want to fight
Fancy
there.
party.
We all got to get all fancy. Yeah.
It's
I spoke it into
I
existence, Austin.
I feel like I haven't like run that many like campaigns, even though chronologically I've been DMing for a decent amount of time now. But I feel like Fancy Party Fight has got to be a trope that features online.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that come.
We haven't had any death saving throws, right? Not a single one yet.
I have made several death saving throws.
Are you telling us? Are you telling us you want to see someone die, Wally?
Not saying I want to see someone die. I like to up the stakes. We're level 7
we need to make a pact right now on podcast. Whoever dies has to play a character that could be a captain when they come back because we need a captain so bad.
No captain. No, never.
So funny.
No.
For context, when we pitched, when we was talking about the show, I was like,
right.
First of all, there's lots of options here, so consider that you can be weird in this campaign. And I said, second, you're on the ship, so consider that you'll want to have a role on the ship. And I listed like 8 or 9 that I thought could potentially be it, and some of them had like big overlap. But one that I assumed there would either be like a captain or a first mate individual, but someone who was a face, and none of y'all rolled up faces, and it's very funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us wanted to be hello, new party. I want to be the boss.
Yeah. I didn't want.
Well,
and
that's understandable. That's why I figured that no one would choose captain, but I sort of figured someone would choose like the role of I interact and negotiate on behalf of the party when it comes to doing jobs, and no one did that.
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So for question number 5, here the last question on this user. If Austin were to be a player rather than a DM, what kind of character would he play, and who would be the new DM? So an interesting fun fact is there's actually a number of not quite forever DMs, but frequent DMs in this group. Noir runs a very long running campaign for myself and Austin and some friends. Wally, I understand that you have DM'd before, and I've run some one shots.
Yeah.
I'm the only person here who's never DM'd.
So by default, Red would be the new DM, of course.
No.
Wally doesn't have anyone else to vouch for him. Yeah, make Red do it. Wally doesn't have anyone to vouch for himself. So yes, Wally is an amazing. I mean, so is Noir, but Sophia already spoke to that. Wally ran a great little. What level range was it? It was a very short campaign.
It was
compared to Noir's campaign, which is we're at level 10 right now. We've been playing for
11,
3 years. 11 at level 11.
Yeah,
3 years. Yeah.
Nice. Started at 2 or 3 or something
yours,
like that.
Yours was like a summer. You ran it over the course of a summer, and it was like an intrigue with the coolest villain.
Yeah, it was a quick 3 to 10, but
very very.
I don't want to
cool.
get into it, but yeah, we have great DMs.
So we have a dearth of DMs.
What would I play?
Yeah, Austin, what's your character?
What would I play?
Are you the captain?
He's the captain.
He's the captain.
2 options. One, I would love to play a renegade Githyanki. I think someone who would sort of quit out the same way that Cressida actually has sort of dropped being from. She's from obviously not all drow are evil, but the drow from the city Menzo Branson are very evil, and she's from there, and she sort of quit that life. I think I would kind of play the Githyanki version of that.
Classic
and
Drizzt
I don't know
maneuver.
exactly what class that would be, but probably maybe a swashbuckler rogue, maybe a Psi-Knight, which would be a psionic fighter, maybe a swashbuckler rogue, so that he could be sort of a party face, but also this scoundrel kind of character. So it would either be that or I was thinking about this the other day after when I say that I mean months ago when I finished watching when I was watching Boba Fett, and the that Wookiee character showed up, and I was like, Wookiees are awesome. Do I have a Wookiee in this Planescape? And I decided Leonins are my Wookiees.
Nice.
So
nice.
I was like the whole of droids don't rip people's arms out of their socket when they lose. Leonins are known to do that kind of vibe. So I think I would play a Leonin. And in fact, in the campaign that Wally ran, we went to one of the Outer Planes. We went to the Beastlands, met a Leonin that my friend Kyle played, and it was one of my favorite PCs I've ever played with. He was
a Beast Barbarian. It was fantastic.
He was a Beast Barbarian. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I think like some sort of Leonin Barbarian as well to copy my friend.
Incredible. This next question comes from Yellow Brick. Before the questions, I want to say thank you so much for making the podcast. I've always loved the Planescape, and I've never seen a full campaign going into a bunch of different planes done right, especially one where the prime material matters so much. So thanks for making my D&D dreams come true. Okay, so onto the questions. I narrowed it down to one per person. Austin, I really love the planes you used in Season 1. Included are some of my favorites like Mechanus. Are there any previews of some planes you might get to see in Season 2? Maybe any of the Domains of Dread for a future Halloween episode. Noir, Virla is
man. Sorry, Gary, finish the questions.
Noir, Virla is obviously a character of many mysteries. Do you know any information hidden in Virla's lost data spheres that we do not? Sophia, what was Dani's reaction when she saw the Paraspora power-up for the first time? Red, is Kyana going to get a wardrobe change with her new character development? Also because her robes are probably still singed from Session 0. If so, what will it look like? Wally, what was it like for Finbar whenever he was first working with his cooking teacher? Can't wait for Season 2 and all the planar shenanigans to come. So to kind of loop back around, Austin, any planes we might see?
Yeah, so Domains of Dread are awesome, and I considered... my first draft of the Feywild adventure was a Domain of Dread adventure, and then I was like, no, we gotta go see the Feywild. But that being said, would love to go to a Domain of Dread. I think this season you're gonna see some of the good planes. So this past season, actually, if you look at the wheel, you'll notice that it's all on the lawful side, trending towards lawful evil, and then going up to lawful neutral. And with some other planes like inner planes mixed in and Sigil and stuff like that. I think we'll see some good planes in this next season. No spoilers on exactly, but they're heading to brighter skies.
Nice. And Noir, do you know anything that was on Virla's lost data spheres, or are they just off in the ether?
Not really like about the lost data spheres themselves, but something like regarding his organization before the event that left him amnesiac. He used to be very organized and meticulous, like racks and racks of these data spheres, very intricately labeled and stuff like that. But even at that time, he had a little hidden panel where there was like a little basket that he kept his favorite data spheres, and those were the ones that were kept unstolen from what I remember, and those included stuff like the tale that Virla told of the contest between gods and stuff like that. So
nice.
Yeah.
As for Dani's reaction when she saw the Paraspora power up for the first time, while my reaction as Dani for most things is to do my the cackle, I think she actually probably would have been pretty quiet, uncharacteristically almost, and just sort of like taking in like, this is the result of my hard work. It's worked, and this is awesome. Red, do you think Kyana's going to get any wardrobe updates for Season 2? To kind of peel back the curtain, we are going to do new character art for Season 2. Part of that's my fault because my character's now blue, but just because it's fun too. Any thoughts on wardrobe?
Nah, I don't think Kyana really cares about what she clothes herself. But like, what on this at the same level, it's like if it's not roughly the same arrangement as the clothes she's always worn, it's not going to work out. So it's like there's not going to be no sleeves. There's not going to be nothing on the midriff. We're rocking straight bow style in this, nice. And nice. Like yeah. So I don't know. Maybe something a little more in line with the City of Brass, but I don't think it would even occur to her, honestly. So
amazing.
Yeah.
And then Wally, what was it like for Finbar with his previous chef master?
His previous chef master was Cardamon, who was he was on a GIF ship. That's GIF with 2 Fs. And it was his first encounter with another Furbolg outside of the Feywild. So. And Finbar is the kind of person who gets homesick, so it was a breath of fresh air for him to meet someone like him all the way out in the Astral Sea.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, this next question comes from Rowan. Dear Rolling with Difficulty crew, I've been having a great time listening to Season 1 these past few weeks, especially as someone who isn't familiar with D&D. I had a great time. Wonderful job. Thank you. My question is for everyone, but I think mainly for Austin. In an earlier episode, you mentioned the initial pitch you sent everyone was D&D Cowboy Bebop, but that it later evolved into D&D Star Trek. Can you tell us a little more about this initial pitch, and how did it end up involving everyone else? How did it end up evolving as everyone else gave their input? Best of luck for Season 2.
Yeah. Maybe there's some way I could post too what I wrote up as the pitch, my pitch document, which is very important if you're starting a new campaign.
Yes. One
that you think is going to last. Like if you're doing a one shot, you don't have to do this much work. But an important thing is getting everyone on the same page for the tone, the style, and what they should expect. And if there's anything special about your world, for example, if you're Dragonborn are all outlawed, don't spring that on a player after they've chosen a Dragonborn. Tell them that up front, right? That being said, I originally thought they were going to be a lot grimier, a lot more. I thought it was going to be a lot more Firefly, a lot more Mandalorian. Of like these guys are like these people kind of suck maybe a little bit. They have this ship and they're just kind of going around. They don't like staying in one place because when they stay in one place, they tend to cause problems and people throw them out anyway. So my thought was that they were going to be a lot more. It's still partially true. I thought they were going to be a lot more Chaos Gremlin-y, kind of the way Dani is. And instead, they kind of came to me with all these like pretty good-natured people who mostly want to explore. Like Virla is explicitly like a chronicler, wants to like see and learn new things. Finbar, part of the Gourmet Guild, is just seeking out new flavors, much like the what do they call the gourmet hunters or something from Hunter x Hunter. Like that's kind of their whole shtick. So he's really an explorer too, and Kyana is here because she's learning that there's a whole new world, and she's just excited to see it all. So yeah, it really ended up becoming more of like go boldly than go someplace and get paid and keep sailing. It ended up being more like let's go see what's exciting here. And I think
I don't like it when people don't like me. I play characters that do nice things for people.
It's also interesting because I mentioned I produced the campaign. Originally, when I approached Austin to DM it, I'm like, hey, my idea is for episodic. I really want this show to be like as episodic as possible, because a lot of the barrier to entry to D&D actual play pods is that there's just like a huge backlog of info you need to understand to jump in. And for the most part, I think we stuck to that. I think season 1's a little bit story-based, but it's to our benefit. Season 2 will probably be a little bit more of a return to the format, but the original pitch for the show was like the Fae Bureau of Investigations. It was based on procedurals. Yes. And Austin came back to me with like, hey, I have this Planescape campaign, and it was like amazing. So the pitch process I think was really fun, but part of why I think Dani might be so much a reflection of the original concept for the series is that I was the first one to get to know what the original concept for the series was. So before everyone else's characters were developed, I was already building Dani to Austin's pitch. And that's probably why there's the nastiest chaos gremlin ever, and then these 3 wonderful Star Trek employees.
She's a bit of a shit kicker.
Well, it works. Now we're narrative foils.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone loves foils.
We love it. Yeah. But it's been really fun to see how the concept for the campaign has evolved as we play it, and that's kind of how all campaigns go. You start with one idea, and as you play, it morphs into something that is the creation of everyone at the table. This next question comes from Freedom13. They have put the 13 in Roman numerals, so if that's not the number 13, I'm so sorry, but I will not be reading that on the podcast. So for the players, was this your first time playing these D&D classes? What did you enjoy about playing them, and did any abilities have a learning curve you weren't expecting?
It's pronounced Roman Jiv.
I hate you so much.
It'd be Roman G.
This is my first time playing a wizard. I think one of you guys said it, just like doing. I think it was Wally, just choosing something different than what you usually play. Kind of similar to Sophia. I usually play bards and rogues. I think I've only played bards and rogues. I've only just now started to like branch out into other classes. But wizard seemed like a nice choice, just because I already like spellcasting, and the personality of Virla seemed to be pretty well suited for wizards, specifically Order of Scribes wizard, which is I think what Wally had pitched, and I really like that idea. I really like this idea of an awakened spellbook being able to cast spells from them with like a 300-foot radius.
Yeah.
So like just another place for me for Virla to like cast spells out of.
So broken.
Yeah, and then like this other concept that I used very briefly in like one of the earlier sessions, but I haven't really gone back to since, is that you can change the damage type of the spell as long as it's in like the same spell level and stuff like that. Yeah. I think I did that in like
being able to instantly copy, basically instantly copies.
The amount of spells that you can copy is the spell time. The time to do so has been dramatically reduced. To just
it saves your butts.
I've been loving it.
Kind of jumping off of that, like I've never played Artificer before this campaign. I've been playing D&D for a while, and I've played every class except for Druid and Artificer prior to this campaign. Although I almost always choose a bard if I'm given the option to. So the fact that I'm not a bard in this campaign is a sheer miracle. But I've been loving Artificer. It's so fun. It's kind of like the best parts of being a skill monkey while still being able to be effective in combat. What I like about Bard is that it's such a flexible class and you can adapt it to a lot of things, and Artificer is functioning in a very similar way. Although I have struggled with reminding myself that you can add a d8 to you for one thing that gets hit with them. I thought it was just spell attack rolls. Now I have a post-it note that says add your d8 on my laptop, so it's fine. And similarly, like just as always comes with playing a new class, is just remembering to actually read the descriptions for everything, which I don't have a super high reading comprehension, so I miss stuff. But as terms of like flavor and the actual like abilities the class has, I really like Artificer, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it, since it was again one of the two classes I've never played. But I think, as I mentioned, I am technically prepare spells, but I choose not to choose new spells every day. That is a choice that I, the player, am making, because I hate preparing spells. It's maybe my least favorite mechanic in 5e, even though it gives you a lot of flexibility. But that's just a decision I've made. But other than that, love an Artificer.
I genuinely don't remember if I've played a monk before, honestly. I mean, it wouldn't have been a 5e monk anyway. But like, you know, in my escapades in 3.5, like I started off with like a ranger rogue multi-class because I just really liked having all them skills, but I also really liked being able to snipe people. And I played a barbarian for a couple one-shots, and I think I played a bard one time, but like a lot of those were very short games that didn't really last very long because it was like college and everyone was busy. And it's somewhere in there I might have played like a monk multi-class. I don't know. I've fooled around with a lot of classes. You know, you lose track. Yeah. But I've never played it in 5e, so.
I feel like you probably didn't because, sorry to interrupt, because when we were assigning attributes when we rolled our characters, you were like, all right, monk, highest goes into strength, and I was like, no!
Well, you know, maybe they were statted differently in 3.5. I don't remember. It's been so long.
They used to be strength-based, I think.
Yeah.
All right, then that explains
sure
it.
At least they were strength.
Who knows? Maybe I did play one. I don't remember. It's all so blurry. But they're very different. And like they've completely revamped the way the classes work from 3.5 to 5e. Because of course in 3.5 you'd play like a core class up to level 10, and then you can get a prestige class, and that's where they were hiding all the weird class features and stuff like that. So instead of the subclass stuff, which you now select at like level 3. It was just like, you know, you get 10 levels in a regular thing and then you get to be weird about it. Whereas in this case, it's basically just completely different class depending on which kind of thing you're doing. So it's like you can be like your edgy warlock boy, or you can be like a nice warlock boy, or you can be like a spooky eldritch warlock boy, and they're just completely different, which I think is really cool. But like, you know, they've changed where the compartmentalization happens. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Wally, what about you? You've been around the D&D block. Have you ever played a?
You're
multi-classing, so you have a lot of options.
Yeah. Two things about me. I will either play a ranger or I will multi-class, and I am doing both. So and Austin played a Stars Druid, and I was like, I gotta. He had so much fun with it. I gotta get in on it. Yeah.
Stars Druid is big fun. Highly recommend. There's nothing better than
it looks so cool.
He doesn't have this level feature yet because he's multi-classed, but at 6th level, it's nothing better than when your DM is like, the bad guy makes their save by 1, and you get to go, whoa, and roll a d6 and subtract the number, and then suddenly they fail. It's awesome.
Yep. Amazing. Well, this next question comes from Stars in a Jam Jar. Can we actually know what Ione was doing during session 0? What precisely happened there with Kyana? How much of her entire deal was fully fleshed out? I love her so much with all my heart, and when I realized our introduction to Ione was her second narrative appearance, I just developed a burning desire for more. I also realized when I went to draw her for the first time, followed by the second and third and more, that we never actually got a description of her beyond the fact that her colors are green, and I pretty much made up my design from her from scratch. So what does Ione look like? Also, fully unrelated, will we be catching more of Cressida and Lula about the Planescape? So to answer the first part of your question, to know what Ione was doing during Session 0, keep an eye out for the upload of Session 0 that is coming shortly, and you can get all those juicy details for yourself. The TLDR is that she was tracking her down, as many of our villains have been doing. But you get to
not what I assumed was happening initially.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they let you out? And she was like, what? No. I'm hunting you down. And I was like, oh, that makes more sense.
But
no, they're pissed.
It's like, oh, okay.
I love the love for
maybe
the
I changed their hearts. Just kidding.
I love the love for the NPCs of the Planescape. So Austin, can we get a description for what Ione's appearance looks like? And do you think we'll see more of our Drow and her spider tracker friend in the future?
Oh my goodness, I can't remember if I described her in Session 0 or not.
Ooh, everyone!
So I'm gonna say
the timestamp.
I'm gonna say I don't want to
fact-check.
contradict anything. So I'm gonna say hold off for Session 0. But I will also say there are a few NPCs that I've specifically been pretty vague about because I like that people can just, I like people imagining how they look. And I think because it's very unlikely we're going to get official art for every single character. So
how much are we willing to shell out?
Yes, exactly. So I like the idea that some of it just belongs to the fans, and that the version you imagine in your head is better than the one I could come up with. And I think that mostly just applies even when I describe people. But for Ione, she wears the same vestments. She is human. And other than that, sort of let your imagination run wild. Unless I described her, in which case that's what she looks like. As far as Cressida and Lula, I don't want to spoil too much for Season 2, but I think it's safe to say she was one of my favorite NPCs to play, and she seemed to be a favorite among you guys and the fans. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her rolling up again.
We need her in the gala episode, and we need Lula in a bow tie.
Amazing.
That would be funny as fuck.
So funny.
She's got a little tray balanced on her. They're undercover. Nobody notices.
It's
the table is a giant spider.
Into the Spider-Verse.
The dramatic irony.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's really funny. The dramatic irony is that Lula is powered by a horrible, horrible demon soul that was harvested in the abyss. So it's like a nasty fucker in there. But
Lula's so nice and sweet.
But she's a good boy.
She's a good boy.
Good spider.
Good girl, actually.
Oh, good girl.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Good boy is gender neutral. We all know that.
Yeah. Good boy is gender. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this next question comes from Celine. Hello all, question to the players. How would a one-on-one meeting be like between you and your characters? Looking forward to Season 2. So what would it be like if you met your character? Red, we want to start with how you and Kyana would interact?
Oh, easy. We just hang out, man. She's a very simple character, so we're not that different on like the most fundamental level. And it's like, she's easy to please, I'm easy to please. We can just hang out.
Yeah. I feel like Dani is all of my like deep hidden impulses made manifest. Like Dani is like the emotions that Sophia's like, no, we're in polite society. We can't just rage all the time.
Danny's your Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, Danny's my Mr. Hyde. But I don't know how, like, I think meeting, I would just be like, this bitch is trouble. You know? Like, it'd be like, oh, I like you, but we can't go in public together.
See, on the flip side, it'd be the other way for me. After a while, Finbar would get tired of me. But no, other than that, as long as he feeds me, we'll be chill.
That's true. I feel like Finbar is maybe the NPC or the PC that I would want to meet the most, because I think meeting Finbar would involve getting fed a delicious meal by Finbar, and I'm totally okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'd be kind of freaked out by Virla, because when's the last time that I ever saw like a 6 foot tall, like, functioning
We don't talk about how tall Virla is, I think, nearly enough.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know how tall Virla is.
Tall enough to be unsettling.
Is a short king, but
maybe my head can't. My template off like visually was like K2SO from Rogue One, like this really tall, lanky guy.
And gangly,
but I guess going off of Wally's design, I guess he is a bit of a short king. I don't know.
I'm thinking maybe the legs are like adjustable, but like you don't know where the settings are for that.
fun.
The data sphere with the knob for that, it got smashed, and you just don't realize you can gain like a full foot of height.
Nice.
Growth spurt.
Yeah, exactly. With a little winch.
So we've got time for one more question here. If your question was not answered live on this Q&A, then be sure to check your inbox because you will be receiving a response to your question that we will make sure the whole cast gets in on. So never fear, you'll get your answers. But we've got one last question to read here live on the pod. This comes from Nick. What was the plan for the story if Kyana would have been unkidnappable? If Egan hadn't resonated with the crew as well as he did, would Dani have had to be kidnapped as well, or would another NPC have taken his place instead?
Huh.
So kind of like alternate universe, Kyana's not kidnapped and Egan is I guess not Egan. Not Egan. No.
I'm so sorry. There was so much there. I'm not sure can you say one more time what it was?
In this alternate universe.
What was the plan for the story if Kyana would have been unkidnappable? So you didn't manage to get her away. If Egan hadn't resonated with the crew as well as he did, would Dani have had to be kidnapped as well, or would another NPC have taken his place? So sort of two bits here. The first one
this feels like two questions.
Yeah, if Kyana wasn't able to be kidnapped, which I think we touched on earlier, is like, when you were talking about your schism and how the episodes are being planned, like what would the rest of the season have looked like? And then a second question of like, if Egan hadn't really resonated with us as an NPC, aka punching bag, would you have tried to kidnap Dani instead, or was there like another NPC that you had planned to kind of fill that void?
No. Okay. Yeah. So let's start with the second part because chronologically, that's how it went down. So the thought of, and so this is a little lifting the DM screen, which I don't always like to do. I think it's done sparingly. It's very useful. If you lift it too much, you break the verisimilitude. But an important lesson for Dungeon Masters, so I'm going to share it. Players, plug your ears if you don't want to hear it. I originally thought the Intellect Devourer might attack Dani because she would be on the ship so much, and she is useful. For very specific reasons, she's very useful to them. Or maybe at first I thought maybe Kyana, but I was like, no, they need Kiana's brain, so they can't just have that get eaten by an Intellect Devourer. So I thought maybe Dani. But there's always here's a lesson: never call for a roll you're not prepared to go south. Because if I had the Intellect Devourer attack her, and by some reason she fails her save, and I rolled crazy high on the dice, I actually don't even know if it was possible to. With her intelligence, 3d6, technically it was possible I could have rolled high enough. That just would have been the end of Dani, and that would have sucked for Sophia.
A lot of reasons.
So, so instead I thought, okay, I'll create a character that, I can't remember who I was basing it off of now. I'll see if I can remember. But I was like, I'll just create like a background character who can kind of like go in, and it won't be weird that they've been introduced because they're at a place that Dani knows, but then can get swept away and they can fail against the Intellect Devourer, get taken over, and then it'll just be this cool little encounter where this person they barely know suddenly acts really weird, and they're like, what was that about? And then as a gift, Sophia invented an entire relationship with this character immediately, because I came up with the idea of Egan like 2 days before or something like that, because I was like, oh crap, now that I know the Intellect Devourer is aboard, I needed to get in someone, and I thought about Dani, and I was like, no, it can't be Dani. So I came up with this character, and it was nothing in backstory. Sophia just totally as a gift made this character this great relationship, and it ended up having this great dynamic when it went south. And I think you really nailed it, because it was the perfect amount of like, you're kind of close to him, but also it's not like your best friend, so it's not too tragic. It just really sucked. So I thought that worked out. That was the Egan. Did I answer the Egan part successfully?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We yes-anded our way into an emotional gut punch.
The second part, what if Kyana wasn't kidnapped? Again, something you got to be prepared for is the dice can always go. I was pretty confident because the Retriever is really fucking tough. I was pretty confident it would happen, but again, you guys, I totally didn't even consider you bringing Maxim in. If you had brought Maxim in, that fight would have gone way differently, and in fact, you had the idea and executed. The dice just weren't in your favor in terms of getting him there fast enough. but it was totally possible for Maxim to come in and fuck shit up, and you guys probably would have been kidnapped. In which case, either I would have had to consult my notes and see if it was reasonable that the mind flayers had the ability and the drive to come to you. So then it would have been the mind flayers show up in the dreadnought, and it would have been Death Star. You guys, it would have been very similar to episode 3, with you guys probably trying to escape, or maybe going aboard and fighting your way through to save monks and kill the Illithid. I don't know how you guys would have approached that. It would have been that, or it would have been something completely different. I had to come up with if I decided that the dreadnought showing up was a little too. I have to like force the puzzle pieces to fit. You never want to force that conflict when they make decisions and the dice reinforce those decisions that lead one way in a story. You don't want to backpedal to be like, well, I had this cool moment, so let's make that happen anyway. So it would have had to be something completely different, and it might have tied to Virla, maybe. Like maybe there would have been more answers about Virla, or something like that. But yeah, I would have had to come up with. I had more episode ideas, just none of them seemed very season finale-y, so I would have had to crank them up to make them season finale-y.
I think it's, and the things that could have been might still pay dividends in the future. I know the placement of Egan, like you mentioned, when I gave you my backstory, other than like Otto, I don't think we had. Maybe Zax, the fire dwarf guy.
I'm pretty sure I made Zax.
Yeah,
up,
I think you made him
I was
up.
like,
so
I gotta have
those are the two NPCs in the heap that I knew about. Egan was a complete surprise, and I just like to guess and characters, and it wasn't a chance to show that Dani is still kind of an asshole. But that's inspired me for season 2 to like flesh out the crew of the heap a bit more. So we might be seeing some similar things in the future, and kind of tied into that, like Kyana not getting kidnapped would have changed the trajectory of the story, but it also means that Austin has a chance to save some of those possible other episodes for season 2. So the things that have
there would have
the things that have
it would have come back later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I mean, my personal thing was in, I think it was 6. Yeah, in episode 6 when Virla had sort of like cracked open this mystery or whatever. My first thought was, oh, okay, so we'll spend the next episode going to Mechanus, but then we are absolutely going to go to the Prime Material Plan and try and find these mind flayers and kill them. Yeah. It's the least we could do for Kyana. And then I was trying to think of like, how are we going to find them? Yada yada yada. So to me, Austin, you just kind of you accelerated Virla's goals by just like helping figure out where to kill those mind flayers.
Yeah, whatever you want to advance the line, kidnap one of us. It'll be fine.
Proactive players. Yeah. DMs, be very careful kidnapping your players. Reddit is an incredibly good sport. Normally, on a not podcast, if I thought a character was going to get kidnapped, I would speak to the player beforehand to let them know that it could happen and just make sure they're cool with it. I put a lot of trust in Red, as I'm sure she does in me as a DM, for that moment to work out dramatically, and I appreciate that she went with it as well as she did, and again got a little extra feat for playing along with a very difficult story.
Yeah.
So.
It was nice. Yeah. I did want to say that I was sort of contemplating, like, what does this revelation mean to Kyana? And I think if the kidnapping hadn't happened, she would have had to kind of make the decision to go back to this place she'd spent so much time running away from to try and help. Because it's like, do I care about freedom more than I care about everyone else who was stuck there? And the answer is, it's a tough decision. It's really scary. But getting kidnapped kind of made the decision for me, so I can continue to not use my brain for stuff, which I appreciate.
And that's actually a good point. Never be afraid to conspire with your players. When we were coming up on episode 7, I asked Noir. I was like, "Oh yeah, are you gonna like look into like now might be a good time to like look into that your backstory stuff because I had hoped and of course." I planned for a botch to, I planned that a botched roll would still have some effects. You roll a natural 1 on one of those checks, and the answer, as a result of the thing, was like, oh, you get like a big question mark instead of any answers. And, but you knew you were smart enough to ask people new questions, which led you to Mechanus eventually anyway. But coming up on what I knew had to be the plot, I prompted you and was like, why not, like you mentioned doing this, like this episode would be a good time to do that. It might have been the same way where I might have prompted Red and been like, like, are you interested? You interested in going back there? Because if you are, now might be a good time.
Yeah. If it were up to me at the time, then that would have been a tricky decision. But like, fortunately, the kidnapping definitely smoothed things over there, and now it's like if we want to chase down the mind flayers, like that's where that decision can be sitting now. Yeah. But like for now, I'm like, heck yeah, problem solved.
I think it all worked out for the best in the end. But it's always interesting to kind of game out like, what could have been. But we'll hesitate I hesitate to do too much gaming of that out because of course we have season 2 coming up, and there's a lot of threads that we might pull there. But that kind of brings us up to time on this post-season decompression Q&A. Again, if your question was not answered, keep an eye on for an email from the cast in the coming weeks. Thank you guys so much for all listening and playing along with us. We've really enjoyed. I think like closing thoughts for everyone is we've really enjoyed making this. It's been a delight to get to not only play with this table but to share the adventure with all of you. And I'm personally so excited for where we could possibly go in season 2 right now that information resides exclusively in the halls of Austin's mind.
I should probably figure that out.
Yes, but thank you all for listening, and keep an eye out in the coming weeks for more fun stuff to kind of help bridge the gap. But until next time, we'll tap out for now, head back to the Astral Sea, regroup, and share another Yub Nub feast courtesy of hopefully the Feywild family, and hopefully this time I will remember it.
Hell yeah.
Yep. Kidnapping free this time.
Yes. Thanks all for listening, and adios.